Good Thursday morning, everyone. I now call the June 3rd, 2021 Administrative Briefing and Work Session of the Marion County School Board to order at 9 a.m. Please silence your electronic devices to avoid disturbing others. I now ask the school board attorney to explain the rules for this work session.
This work session is a public meeting as defined in Florida's Sunshine Law. This board is dedicated to full transparency in its meetings and its work. In compliance with the Sunshine Law, the board has adopted uniform meeting procedures, including the right for citizens to participate. The board will allow public comment regarding any work session item listed on today's agenda at the appropriate time. Speakers must fill out a request form and hand it to the school board secretary. After the board and superintendent have completed their discussion on a particular agenda item, the secretary will call speakers' names in the order received. At the podium, speakers are asked to state their full name and address and to spell their last names. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. As required by the Sunshine Law, the board must maintain orderly conduct and proper decorum throughout this meeting. Speakers may criticize subject matter and decisions in a respectful manner, but not people. Finally, speakers must be very careful not to violate the privacy rights of others, especially students and their family members, by mentioning their names or other identifying information. Thank you for your attention to these important rules.
Thank you, Attorney Powers. And I'll reiterate our commitment statement. We are the Marion County School District Leadership Team. When we come together to work, we are efficient, effective, and productive. Our 3 most important characteristics are dedicated, transparent, and individually responsible. To work well together, we must demonstrate respect, confront reality, and be accountable. We will always put students first, and we will leave a legacy of success. We will now begin the work session with the superintendent's administrative briefing. Good morning, Dr. Gullett.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Happy to see you all today. Begin the briefing today. I'm going to ask Mr. Knight to come forward. He's going to provide a brief update on Howard Academy and the progress to date. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Mr. Powers, Mrs. Prestipino, and Dr. Gullett. Appreciate the opportunity to give you an update on Howard Academy. As you know, that project's been going on for some time, and behind the scenes, especially with design. Next Tuesday night, the board will have on the agenda the pricing approval request for the interior work. That includes all the demolition, includes all the replacement of the floors, the main structural sections underneath those floors, and all the plumbing inside the building. What's forthcoming is the civil engineering drawings, which we just received, are in pricing, and following the pricing phase for this work, we'll be coming back to the board for the exterior piping, which is the piping for the whole campus. As you may recall, some of the reports we had early on were that we were going to replace the bathroom, ladies' bathroom, and it turned out the men's was just as bad, and then we found the entire plumbing grid was really in bad enough shape it needed to be replaced as well. There's no valving out there at all for the buildings. The tail end of this week, which is really today and tomorrow and leading into Monday, we'll be doing the asbestos removal on the ladies' and the men's bathrooms at Howard Academy. So there will be a crew over there. Matter of fact, they might be there right now finalizing exactly how they're going to approach the start of the asbestos abatement. A lot of the plumbing pipes in the walls have asbestos insulation from 80 plus years ago. That has to be removed before the demolition, and then once the board approves, assuming they'll approve the price for next week, we would begin demolition probably within a week to a week and a half. And following that, we'll be gathering all the submittals to go ahead and place the orders for the plumbing equipment and everything else. So you'll find on the agenda the price. It's about $266,000, which is actually under what we had budgeted for. That's the first in this day and age. And welcome first, but of course we do have the plumbing outside left to do. And then we look like a time frame of about 3 months or September 15th. And a lot of that is predicated upon the ability to get the proper materials. We think we're in the clear as far as the types of materials we need. It's going to go back as a concrete deck on top of the wood. It's a little bit easier to get than plywood and planking, and much cheaper. So we altered the design way back when we started design, just because we had been tracking all along the economy and felt like that would be a more economical solution. And we think it was a $35,000 to $45,000 savings by doing that. Plus, it's more available. So that concludes the update as far as Howard Academy and plumbing. So there will be physical activity on the site now, beginning within the next day or two with the asbestos abatement, and then following board action, the actual construction crews. So unless there's any questions, that's the update for Howard Academy.
Thank you, Mr. Knight.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. It's not on the agenda, but would we ask for public comment right now on this or not? We're good?
Good. I think we're good.
The other item is just to announce that Mark Lander from the Department of Health, Marion County, is on the phone. He will join and share an update as we move into COVID-19 updates.
Great.
That concludes my briefing. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, then it looks like we'll be moving into COVID-19 updates. Good morning, Mr. Lander.
I'm sorry.
Good morning. How are you
At the
today?
appropriate time, also, I have a statement to
Okay.
make. It can be after this.
Okay, thank you. Morning, Mr. Lander.
Good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Keep speaking up.
All right. I will get closer to the phone.
All right, wonderful.
Start off with some updates, just community updates. Over the last 7-day period, we had 160 cases of COVID-19 with a positivity rate that is at 3.39%. Our cases per 100,000 have now dropped to, per week, dropped to 48.8%. So as a community with community transmission, we have now gone from high down to moderate community transmission with regards to COVID-19. I know I was speaking with Dr. Gullett and some other individuals this week, and I was going to give a brief update on different quarantine options as we move into summer school and even into next year, as opposed to the 14-day return period or 15-day return period. It's a 14-day quarantine if you have an exposure. There are 3 options. Of course, there's the original 14-day. We also have option 2, which is a 7-day return, or it's an 8-day return. It's a 7-day quarantine for the student or staff. If they were to get PCR tested on days 5, 6, or 7, and it comes back negative, they could return back. It would be back in a mask for the remainder of their quarantine period, and then at that point, the mask would come off. And then the third option is a 10-day quarantine, which means the student would return or teacher would return on the 11th day, and that is wearing a mask to follow through the 14-day quarantine period, and at that point, it could come off. So I know that was one of the areas we wanted to cover today in case there were any questions that the board may have, but there are 3 separate return to school from quarantine options that are out there right now.
Thank you. Board, do you have any discussion on this? Because I think that the schools definitely are going to need some direction.
I definitely would move in favor of lessening it. What that lessened amount is, I'm open for discussion, but at this juncture, I think what we've, and you know I have been asking this multiple times, what we've seen is that while we've been quarantining for 14 days, we haven't, to my knowledge, seen a significant level of increased exposure among those, exposure is not the right, of positive cases among those that have quarantined. Granted, we understand that there are folks that may not have had their children tested and may not have actually informed the health department if there were symptoms or anything like that. So we understand that there are some of those. But in my opinion, those may be outliers. The majority of folks that I have heard from may have had 2, 3, 4 quarantines of their children who have missed all of those days of school 14 times 4, maybe even more, and have missed all of that instruction time that we know face-to-face instruction is the most valuable. And that's why we've been face-to-face and moving in that direction. So I am all in favor of lessening down from 14 days, but I'm open to what you all want to consider for that.
Thank you, Board Member Campbell.
I would just like to add too, on the testing piece, the testing 5 to 7 day, we have sufficient coverage at the health department between the Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and quicker return times on those results to where we can, if you had individuals that needed to be tested, we can run them through the health department as well.
Thank you, Mr. Lander. I appreciate you mentioning that because that is a big component for our families, especially our families that are in outlying communities like Fort McCoy and way down south. Access to testing is a barrier. And we certainly, especially in summer school and moving forward, but I'll just focus on summer school right now, we really need our kids in school. It's a cost-benefit ratio as well. You know, we're putting a lot of time, money, and resources into our summer school program, and because it's relatively short, 14 days out is a huge chunk of lost learning time. That being said, I like the idea of communicating out the options. You know, we've made it clear that face coverings are optional, but on the medical side, we've really done our best to heed CDC guidelines because we're educators, not doctors. And I think that it makes sense to communicate this out clearly so that parents know. And again, if the student comes back and is not being compliant wearing the face covering, that can't be on the teachers to enforce. You know, if the parents think it's important enough for them to come back quickly and we agree with that, then they just have to follow the rules. And if they don't, sadly, in my mind, thinking this out, it's going to be what it's going to be.
And that is an education piece that we give to the parent as well when they're talking about the quarantine. And I'd have to check, but I even believe we have that in writing. But I'd have to double check. If not, then we would convert that over. But I believe it is in writing on the quarantine piece. But it would be letting the parent know these are your options for return to school, for return early, as you come in, get a positive or get a negative PCR test, either through your provider or, you know, there again in the past, we were just testing the individuals that were sick. In this case, it'll increase our capacity a little bit because we're going to be testing any individual who is a close contact and wants to return on day 8.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Superintendent, what was your feelings about this?
Thank you, Board Member Cummings. I support this because I do think that it's important that our students have as much time in summer programs as possible. If we think about the days that they would miss, the ratio of time would be significant if they're out for 14 days. And I just think we put a lot of effort, and our staff is here and committed, and the families are committed to that. So if we can do that and do that safely, and it's supported by the Department of Health and CDC guidelines, then I think we do that with those provisions that has been described.
Thank you, Dr. Gullett. Mr. Lander, what would be the possibility of being able to get testing done at schools or done very near schools, like a couple of pop-up sites or something to reduce that difficulty of parents taking off work, trying to get their kids in town to the health department to get tested? You guys have pulled so many rabbits out of the hat, I feel comfortable asking.
I know we had originally been working on something. I know Chief Alexander had supported us with a program like that.
Right.
It may be a situation to where if we were to have let's say a large exposure in a 10 to 15 or whatever we set a number as a large exposure, a large enough exposure of kids who would be out, we may be able to set a special testing for them up in that location. It's difficult to test at the time. Certainly, we can have some of those PCRs in school, but I think it would be we have to get the parental permission to do that. So it would be something where if we had the PCRs at the school and we had a nurse at that particular school that could do the swabbing, then when the parent came to pick the child up, we could get potential to, well, there again, we have to wait that 5 to 7 days. So then I was just thinking through that. It would be something where if they were exposure, we could set up something on day 5 or 6 for a PCR, if there were multiple kids out there. If not, then we could, if it was really a transportation issue and a student could not get in, then we could look at using our paramedicine program with Marion County Fire Rescue or Ocala Fire Rescue to get out to those sites if it's truly a transportation issue.
Right.
So that's something we can research right now.
Okay, great, because point taken, because there's that waiting period for incubation, and that's where perhaps maybe a local church out these ways, where a pop-up site could be set up somewhere not at school. It'll take a little coordination, and I know that summer's going to go by quickly, but we just have to be nimble when it comes to these situations.
Right. The different system makes this a little bit more difficult would be if we were just testing a symptomatic student at school. That's done the day of they present with symptoms. Whereas if we're doing this for clearance, then it's got to be more coordinated effort. Like I said, day 5, day 6, day 7 for testing, we'd have to coordinate those efforts to get those students tested.
What is the workability for really being able to do something like this? Because it sounds like it's got 2 prongs. The first one is a symptomatic student possibly being able to get tested at school and getting that done, and then also a pop-up site for higher number exposures to try to get those kids tested and back in school as soon as possible. I know we're on a...
The first is a little bit more difficult because it's just you've got a sick student and trying to get that parental permission right up front. Whereas the second option is, okay, your student is an exposure out 14 days. Bring them here on this date. They will be tested, and there's at that point they sign on approval for testing. They would sign the parental consent.
So, Mr. Lander, this is Diane Gullett. I know we talked about this on our call, and it seemed that based on the numbers we're seeing right now, we're just beginning summer school, that we would handle this on a case-by-case basis with just under 7,000 registered for summer school, and spacing and some of these spread that you described to us being more in a family unit rather than through school transfer, that we would handle this case by case, at least in the beginning, and see what those numbers look like. Is that correct?
Yes,
Right.
that is correct.
I think that sounds reasonable. Hopefully with the mitigation strategies that we're continuing to use in the school settings, we'll make sure that we don't see as much. But we've had the conversation now. We know what the concerns are, and we've got some.
I think the summer setting with a little limited classrooms is going to give us a good idea if we were to implement something like this on how it would work. Specifically, if it was large, or the community piece for getting kids back in quicker. Now would be a good time to see how it works with limited students.
Right. Okay, so as usual, we'll be keeping in good touch, Mr. Lander.
Yes, and we will have our conversation next meeting, I believe, next Wednesday.
Great. Look forward to it. Thank you. Is there any
Y'all take
other
care.
inputs for Mr. Lander? Okay.
Thanks for working with us.
Yes, thank you.
That's exciting news.
All right, y'all have a good day.
Mr. Lander, thank you. We appreciate your partnership.
Appreciate you all. Thank y'all very much.
Bye. All right.
Okay, good morning, Chair Thrower, Vice Chair King, board members, Attorney Powers, Dr. Gullett, and Ms. Nicole Prestipino, area directors. We are happy to be here today in front of you to give you a few summer school updates, as we have actually started with 7 elementary schools this week. The hiring updates: as of Tuesday, June 1st, we had 1,537 summer school positions that have been advertised, with 1,232 of those that have been hired or they are in progress to hire. in the process. There are 304 positions remaining to be filled, and out of those 304 positions, 26 are transportation, 165 are instructional staff, and 113 are non-instructional staff. However, with the numbers that we have currently, we are set to go. Again, we started with 7 elementary schools this week, with the remaining all schools starting Monday, June 7th. As far as enrollment goes, an updated number as of yesterday, June 2nd, we ran our numbers again for registration for summer school enrollment, and we did surpass 7,000. We're at 7,604 students. It's exciting. There are 1,490 high schoolers attending a high school program, 1,535 students attending a middle school program. 918 of our students are going to attend a third grade reading camp program, and 4,182 are attending an elementary school program, which includes the numbers that I gave you, the 900 number for the third grade reading camp. In addition, Hillcrest has 44 students that will attend a summer program at Hillcrest. And Fort McCoy, because they're a K-8, we keep them separate, but they have a combined total of 176 students at Fort McCoy in their K-8 program. And we have currently registered 89 students that will be attending one of our 6 VPK sites this summer. So we're very excited about that. In addition, we have 9 sites that will be hosting the extended learning programs that will last from 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 5:45 p.m. And a total of 200 students will be participating in that extended learning program opportunity that happens after those traditional summer school programs at those 9 sites.
And as Mrs. Kynard mentioned, some of our elementary schools started a summer school this week. And so we have just 3 pictures to share with you from these programs. So this is a program called Camp Invention that several of both my schools and Mrs. Kynard's schools are participating in for the summer. Camp Invention is a STEM-based program where students are presented with a challenge and they participate in hands-on building and design in any of the STEM areas. In addition to focusing on STEM, they're able to incorporate the 21st century skills, and they need to collaborate and be innovative with each other as well. And so these are just 3 snapshots. I'm sure we'll have more pictures to share with you as the summer goes on. Thank you, Mr. Christian, for sharing this. But these are our kids busy at work at Camp Invention and building and designing.
I love it. That's awesome. Challenge accepted.
Yes, exactly. It's very exciting to see the summer work already happening and the summer learning.
And smiles.
I do have a question. Of those 7,604 students, how many of those students are coming from those low performing schools? Because I think that should have been our targeted audience for summer school because of the slides that we know we're going to experience. And if we're just, if summer school is just being a camp and it's not reaching those kids that are lower performing, then how effective is summer school really going to be?
Absolutely agreed. And we can bring that number back.
Thank you.
So I think we always target our lower performing students for 3rd grade.
Absolutely.
And getting them, but great point.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we're reaching everybody.
Absolutely. The 918 of the 3rd graders that are attending the reading camp are absolutely the ones that we targeted for that specific purpose. But in addition, we'll bring back the rest of the numbers out of that 7,000.
And can you tell me also in that what are we looking at as far as like summer school attendance for like those kids that were at Evergreen, of that group that were there, that group that's at Oakcrest? I think we have to kind of encourage them to participate in summer school if we really want to move the needle.
Absolutely, and I can just give you a brief update, highlight for Evergreen Elementary. I know that several of you were on campus the last student day, and I appreciate the support. But individual phone calls were made to the families on last Wednesday, and continued as they returned calls to us through Friday. And we invited them to the summer school programs on their new sites. Actually, several of them even started at some of the sites, some of those 7 schools yesterday. I believe it was Saddlewood Elementary that had told us that they had a few students that came. Bus transportation actually started running this week for any of our Evergreen students that wanted that for their new school site for summer school. The majority of the schools start next Monday. And we, Dr. Hembrook and I met with all of the principals yesterday where our students are going to be going from Evergreen. We had transition meetings with the admin teams at the 5 individual schools where the majority of our students will be going. And we were able to have conversations with the principal and AP from Evergreen Elementary, ourselves, around the table with the new school administration. And they have been welcoming their families. They encourage them to come to summer school, as we did as well. And then as their summer school starts, we've also encouraged them to follow back around with their families if they're not coming, just to welcome them to the school. Some of them are going to offer the tours, just again, making them feel as welcome as possible on the new campus. Very excited. I mean, they're so excited. The new administrative teams, I mean, they're super excited to have the students there. So we had some really awesome meetings yesterday.
Great conversations.
We really did.
Yeah.
So we're excited about that.
Thank you.
Also, it's my understanding that when the teachers and the paras had an option, they were provided a list of their schools, and a few, I don't know the numbers, they were following those students. So there are also going to be those familiar faces and those relationships. So that was really nice.
So of those two, it was what, I think 204, 206 students. All of those students have been properly placed, and families, everybody's notified. So there's no gap. There's no
They have
break.
been, and again, they're at 5, so the majority of the students are at 5 schools that we talked about. However, we had 25 students that were on an out of area as school choice that had chose to attend Evergreen Elementary. So those students also had the option of going back to their base school, or they could do an out of area for other schools. So we do have probably about 10 additional schools on top of those 5 that are affected, that will have maybe 1 or 2 students from Evergreen that are attending as well. So those conversations are going to continue to happen into the summer. With all the
And the district has a responsibility to track those kids.
We do.
For how many years?
3.
3 years, okay.
We're coding them in Skyward, and we're coding them in Performance Matters, our database as well.
Thank you.
I'm really confident and very thankful for everything that's happening to successfully transition our students from Evergreen. And I can say that with authority because I literally saw a paraprofessional being counseled by Ms. Dobbins about the choices of schools to go to. And also I've run into a couple of principals that are receiving Evergreen students. And you can tell when people are authentically excited. And this is what transition is supposed to be. And you all have pulled it off so far. And I'm grateful on behalf of the whole board, the tremendous effort that you're doing on a proactive basis to help our kids, because they've had great instruction and they're ready to be taught and they're ready to continue to flourish. So we're going to see big things from these kids. I have no doubt. They're survivors.
Absolutely. And we have amazing school-based teams that we work with every day. And people that were around the table at the transition meetings, from the school psychologists, social workers were there, administrators, coaches, guidance counselors, people that were off contract coming to the table to discuss their new students. It was amazing.
Feels good.
It does.
All right, shifting gears just a little bit, we're going to bring back up MCPS Online. I know we discussed this about a month ago and had some good proposals on the table. Unfortunately, we were really hampered with funding and whether that was going to be allowed for next year. I know to this point, Dr. Gullet did send the email, has not received a response back from the Department of Education regarding our request. So at this point, I think we can probably interpret that silence and need to make a decision to move forward with communication, because we've got to give parents the opportunity to make a selection of what their learning opportunity will be for next year. So I'd like to bring that back up and see if we're ready to make that decision and go ahead and put that communication out to parents.
Madam Chair, it's just disappointing because I really do think that we had a great concept in place without the guaranteed funding for it, though. There's no way, in my opinion, that we can offer MCPS Online. I do hope that in the future that the Department of Education will consider innovative options from public schools, and I'll just leave that there. And but I know that we had a good plan in place. So it's definitely a model that would work well in the future should they choose to accept it. At this juncture, I don't believe that we can move forward with MCPS Online because of the funding issue.
Thank you, Board Member Campbell.
Have we reached back out to DOE? I mean, have we called, have we just pressed the button, keep pressing the button? Sometimes you have to just be persistent.
No, we have not sent an additional request. I can tell you that there was a bill that was passed for innovative learning options that's only available to high-performing districts, which means you have to be a consistently A-performing district, and they would allow some flexibility in providing different learning options for those students, which we would not qualify for that under the current language of that bill.
That's correct.
I mean, I hate having our families and parents on hold. It's once again, we kind of being held at bay by the state's decisions on certain things, so.
Dr. Gullett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board Member Cummings, I also did have a conversation with the Chancellor. So we talked about what we've done and how these students are successful. And so if anything changes and we do here, I would certainly bring that to you all as a board, but I did have a conversation as well.
Thank you, Dr. Gullett. I'll just say that the silence is deafening. We really need feedback and partnership and support to do our work. And when we know we've identified, was over 300 students, right, that were benefiting. And it was interesting that it was a middle school cohort during such a pivotal time in a child's life. It's unconscionable to me to just not hear back. And I don't know how long we can wait, because that puts us in the position that we typically find ourselves in, of having to exhaust ourselves to try to do it right for kids. And that's a systems issue, it's a systems problem, and I hope that we will continue to be forthright and very vocal about our need and expectation of a partnership with everyone that is involved in influencing public education. So, what's the bottom line here in terms of how soon? Obviously, families wanted to know yesterday, but
Yeah, so we can certainly put out a press release, regarding what our options are. I think the important thing is for those families that want to maintain a virtual option for their children next year, they need to know the steps that it takes to get enrolled in Marion Virtual School. And we also need to know from our side how many more additional students we're going to be supporting in Marion Virtual, so we can make sure we have enough teachers to provide that support through Marion Virtual and can make any adjustments in our staffing plan as necessary.
right. So right now, Dr. Gullett, it's a matter of communicating out the options we do have for virtual, with the caveat that subject to change.
Yes.
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 Makes sense.
Okay. Consensus that we have?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Appreciate it, as always.
We have, Madam Chair, if I may, we have one other COVID-19 related item from Brent Carson, who's representing J.C. Oliver today, to talk about EPSLA and the additional 5 days that were afforded to our employees based on COVID-19. Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Carson.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, please. Thank you.
Same. Good morning, thank you. Good.
Morning. Thank you, sir.
Morning, Chair Thrower, Vice Chair King, board members, Dr. Gullett, Mr. Powers, and Ms. Prestipino. I'm here today to get some guidance from you regarding the resolutions that we currently have for COVID-19. As you know, back when this started, Commissioner Corcoran asked us to lead with compassion and grace, and you did that. And you did that through some resolutions that supported employee benefits beyond just what the federal government laid out. The federal government laid out the EPSLA rules, which gave us 10 days for employees if they, under certain circumstances, if they were impacted by COVID, they would get up to 10 days of leave that didn't count against the employee's leave time. It was paid for by the district. You guys went beyond that with an additional 5 days of leave if they had exhausted all of their time. In addition to that, there was a resolution that allowed us to protect employees if they got past that. And basically it said that employees could use their currently earned sick time and uncompensated time up to 6 weeks if they were impacted by COVID in specific ways for that amount of time and protect their job. Now, one of those resolutions, and that's Resolution 2101, specifically talks about EPSLA. It talks about the 5 days, and it also talks about the fact that you've also allowed employees that their job allowed for them to telework while they were at home rather than use that leave time. So Resolution 2101 talks about that. Resolution 2007 talks about the 6 weeks, the up to 6 weeks of unpaid leave if they're impacted by COVID and they've gone past all of their use time. Because as you know, if an employee's out for more than 10 days uncompensated, then we're looking at them abandoning their position or them having to resign their position. So that protected them. Resolution 2101 actually has a sunset date of June 30. And that was written into the resolution. That was board approved. And there is no sunset date for the other resolution for 207 or 2007, but it kind of goes hand in hand with 2101. Now, the thing for you to consider is that the federal government, while it stopped requiring businesses to allow EPSLA in March of this year, they did give businesses the option of continuing that through September 30th and guaranteed the tax credit for those businesses. We clearly don't get the tax credit, but the board decided to allow EPSLA to continue for the fiscal year, and it was to end and sunset on June 30th of this year. So there's a difference in when the federal government says you can, as a business, and you as a school entity, allow EPSLA to continue, which would be September 30th or June 30th. So we need guidance on the board's thoughts on whether they would like to continue these resolutions through the September 30th date, or as they are written currently, or as 2101 is written currently, to sunset that at the end of the fiscal year, which would be June 30th. And then theoretically you could do some or all of both. You could extend EPSLA through September 30th if you made that decision and allow the 5 days and the 6 week protection to lapse on June 30th. Or you could continue one or both of those extra features through the September 30th deadline if you decided you wanted EPSLA to be able to continue through the September 30th deadline. So that is totally your call. And you kind of have a smorgasbord of opportunities and options for our employees to protect their leave.
Nice to have choices.
Yes, ma'am. You don't get them very often, so there you go.
I think, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I think when we went into this, we started this, we wanted to do what was best always for our students, but also for our staff, and making sure that we can look out for our staff. And I think we've been doing that. And I personally don't think we ought to stop looking out for our staff. We need to probably look at trying to make sure they're protected out through the September 30th date. I think that's just the easiest way to do it, and let it expire with the federal.
Thank you, Board Member Cummings.
Yeah, I agree. We have done a good job of looking after our staff, and it should expire, in my opinion, in September.
Thank you.
And I can agree with that. I don't want to say I have concern, but I have at least heard of an instance or two where as soon as the board has continued to extend this, then we might have an employee or two that suddenly has symptoms and is out for a few days. I've heard that a little bit. So I know that those instances could be few and far between, and abuse of the system can happen in any shape, form, or fashion. But I will agree with this board that because the federal government is doing that for the private sector, even though we're not benefits of a tax credit, I do think that we should mirror what the private sector is doing in this regard to September 30th.
Thank you, Board Member Campbell. I agree as well. We're still hiring. It's like no hoof, no horse, no teachers, no students, and all of the other employees that make this big wheel go around. So I feel as much as possible whenever we can mirror and be consistent with other governmental guidelines and support, and as long as we can afford it, let's do it.
So it sounds like we definitely have consensus that we will modify this board resolution to the September 30th date.
Yes,
So it would
sir.
terminate with the federal date,
Right.
or sunset.
Sunset on that September 30th, yes, sir.
Right. Subject to change.
Always.
That's the word of the day. Dr. Gullett, what are your feelings?
I support that. Thank you, Madam Chair. I support that.
Okay.
This board's been very committed to doing, looking out for our employees, and I appreciate that. And if I may, Attorney Powers, is there anything else needed? Then we will
There is not.
do an updated resolution and bring back.
Correct. And as to the degree that one resolution is really an extension of the other, we may be able to, in a new resolution, rescind the prior two and provide an updated date so that it's cleaner, so that we have just one resolution standing out there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carson. Is that it for our COVID-19?
Yes, ma'am. That concludes COVID-19 updates. Thank you.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I asked, is there any public comment? All right, seeing none, we will move right into construction projects update with Mr. Robert Knight. Thanks, everybody.
Morning, had to let the traffic clear there, so.
Yes.
Morning again. Appreciate the opportunity to bring you an update on the various design and construction projects happening around the school district. I'll be brief but concise on all of these items, and certainly please stop me if you have any questions. So on the first page, Bellevue Santos Elementary has two projects going on. There is a roof replacement at the kitchen, and the next phase of the air handler replacement. You may recall last summer we did the kitchen, the cafeteria area and the closest classroom building to that. This is phase 2 of it, and we were waiting till summer, and now we're at summer, and so work is gearing up to start within the next couple of days on both projects. The re-roof project at the kitchen will probably delay the start until we have enough materials to dry the roof in, because we literally have to strip the roof down to the tectum deck, which is in bad shape, replace the tectum deck, and then dry it in, and do that in phases because we're also in the rainy season. Central Warehouse roof is, of course, on hold pending further discussion. District-wide fencing, there are 2 fencing project grants that are out there. This is the first and the oldest of them. There are 5 projects associated with that: College Park Elementary, East Marion Elementary, Spar Elementary, Bellevue Middle, and finally Stanton Waresdale Elementary. Those projects are now complete, and we are working with the Finance Department to reconcile the books on those so we can make preparations to close those. So now we'll move over to the next page, and the first project to discuss is the district-wide fencing project 2021. There are 3 schools associated with that one that we hope to fence. They are Fezzidan Elementary, Bellevue Elementary, and Bellevue Santos Elementary. All 3 are in preliminary design. We've progressed the furthest with Fezzidan because it is the biggest project. One thing to note is that we will be getting with the legal department in due time. The way we have to fence it, currently there are some folks living behind the school, and there is an existing easement that allows the property to be traversed around the perimeter. And I guess for years those folks have been driving right through the school. So there's not a legal issue per se, but we do want to find out how best to notify the homeowners that once the fencing project's complete, they will have to go ahead and use the easement rather than drive directly through the school, because obviously they'll be driving through where the kids are, and the whole point is to secure the campus. So just a footnote there. District-wide hurricane enhancements. All 6 projects have been designed or in design. We've completed Westport and Saddlewood some time ago. Legacy, South Ocala, same thing. Bellevue Middle and Bellevue High are in final permit review now for those projects. Legacy and South Ocala are in the pricing phase, so we hope by the very next board meeting we can get on the agenda for. We'll be bringing pricing forward on those. As you know, Saddlewood and Westport already were approved. Saddlewood, we've completed not only the measurements, but the shop drawing phase has also come and gone. We've made our notes on the final shop drawings, and they are in production on the barriers. Westport, they are finalizing the field measurements. We had to wait till past school being in session because of the fact we had to bring in lifts to get to the windows on the second floors of some of those buildings, and say that they are wrapping up the final measurements there. Shop drawing phase is expected to be a couple of weeks, and then they will be in production on the Westport project. Denellen High School air handler is something that will be starting within the next couple of days. This is a project that's in its final phase of building 1. You may recall the main systems were replaced last summer, and now we're coming back into the classrooms, taking out the ceilings. We're removing the variable air volume units and all the ductwork in each classroom. There's 70 of them to do, and then we'll be putting all that new equipment back, running all the tests, and putting the ceilings back in. At Denellen Middle School, we have a cafeteria that's going to receive HVAC upgrades. We've already issued a notice to proceed. They're in the shop drawing and the equipment procurement phase as we speak. At Evergreen Elementary School, that is also receiving its final phase of air conditioning equipment replacement this summer. We're going to do 4 of the 6 buildings this summer and the other 2 in the fall. Hopefully there won't be any real issues, since there will be plenty of space to work within. And we've been coordinating with the folks at the campus just so they know what's going on. But the plan is to do the 4 buildings this summer and do the final 2 in the fall, and that should wrap up by this fall. Now we'll move on to the 3rd page, and we'll start with Pheasant Elementary School's electric system upgrades. This project is slated for the actual construction work next summer, because we weren't far enough into the redesign this spring in order to order the equipment. And electric, like most things in construction industry, is taking much longer to get. And so we're in the final design reviews on those drawings. We're at actually 50% of the construction set, and then the final set will be the permit set, and then we'll work into the pricing phase. But realistically, it'll have to be updated because summer of '22 is quite a ways off. We've, of course, already heard about the Howard Academy plumbing and floor repairs. Just to reiterate, we'll be doing asbestos removal over the next couple of days, and then pending board action following that with the demolition phase. Lakeward High School chiller replacement, building 4, is actually something being done by the technical services folks, working directly with the manufacturers. They have surpassed the point where the shop drawings have been approved and equipment is being procured as we speak, and some of it is expected to show up by July for installation. And we expect that project to be done by the tail end of August, most likely September 1st. Liberty Middle School transportation and large fuel tank, that is a project where we're taking out the old 2,000-gallon tank and 500-gallon tank of regular gasoline and replacing it with a 10,000-gallon tank. We just cut the designers loose on that the other day, and it's now in design. MTI replacement, of course, is on hold pending further discussion. And at North Marion High School, the cafeteria, one of the bigger projects we've got going on, the exterior masonry walls are complete. Working on finishing the interior walls. There's quite a few block walls in the interior. June 15th, fingers crossed for those that can't see at home, we are expecting delivery of all the main structural steel. That's the columns, that's the main joists, and then we'll start to see the roof deck happen behind that. So far, we've been told there isn't any delay for that project, even though steel is very hard to come by in the construction industry. So much of the upfront work we do, which again, it's behind the scenes, it's things you don't see in the field. We spend quite a few weeks on shop drawing phase directly with the manufacturers and the engineers and the contractors. And all those things were done way early on, especially because of the economy. We suspected there could be an issue, and so far, there's been no word on any sort of delay on getting that steel. So we expect it to show up in mid-June. It'll take into July to get that set because it's quite a big building. Then it'll get roofed, and they'll turn their attention to the interior parts of that. It's kind of a dirty site out there, but if anybody does at some point, especially Mrs. Kingston, that's your area, want to take a peek at it, if you're just curious, it's been months, please let me know. We'll make sure we get you out there and take a look. And if not, we have photos from the job site we can show you as well. Okay, and on the final page of updates, the Northwest Transportation Generator is something that's coinciding with the air conditioning upgrades at that facility. And where we're at on that is we are in final design drawing phase. The generator is actually on site, and it's being priced as far as the installation for it. And that will, again, coincide with the air condition upgrades. The roof and gutter project at that same site is going to be done by the technical services staff. It's not near the scope we thought it was. We thought originally we would have to replace the roof. And after further review and investigation, it looks like just the fasteners, and they feel they can either handle it themselves or through their annually contracted roofing contractor. So those three will probably all happen at once. Last two projects to talk about, Osceola Middle School's cafeteria is roofed, and they're turned their attention to the inside. Right now, duct work is continuing. They've started priming the walls on the inside for paint. Of course, this is a very small box compared to the North Marion High School site. And you've seen, if you've driven by, the scaffolding has come down, the brickwork is complete on the outside, and they just got the windows on site for installation. And so that is expected to complete by the end of summer. We're having a bit of a delay with the power out there. The easement took a while to get because we couldn't get anybody to go draw the survey. And that is now on the board agenda for next Tuesday to get approved. So that'll free up the electric company coming in and setting the main transformer so we can energize the building. And finally, Saddlewood Elementary School's boiler is being replaced. That has been approved and in the shop drawing and procurement phase. And once the equipment shows up here within a matter of weeks, those boilers will be replaced in time for school to start in the fall. And that concludes the update I've got, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. And I'm noticing a pattern of completing work and projects on time, and we love to see deductive change orders. And thank you very much for the overview and for all your hard work. It's appreciated.
Madam
Thank you
Chair.
very much.
If I may, I just a point of clarification, I'm just curious, whenever we're mentioning district-wide hurricane enhancements, that's for our participation in hurricane shelters. So we're hardening our schools essentially for the use of hurricane shelters. Just for public information, that's our role, that we provide shelters during hurricane. I know we have a hurricane briefing update here coming shortly, but that is a $2.8 million investment that the schools are making in that effort. I know that our county and our city both have a part of their strategic initiatives to ensure that they make sure that hurricane preparedness is a part of their planning as well. Just curious if there's ever collaboration with cost savings and those kinds of things whenever potentially they receive emergency management dollars in a different way, because perhaps the county and or the city might receive them. Just kind of as a point of clarification, obviously we're always looking to collaborate as much as we can, but every time I see dollars going out for something that we're doing for the community at large, that there are other governing bodies that oversee that response. I'm just curious if there's ever talk about collaborating and sharing of dollars for our hurricane enhancements.
Mr. Knight, yeah, I was going
Yeah.
to say, can you please share with her how those money, I believe we voted on that at our last one, so you might want to remind her what she voted on. Okay.
Yes, the $2.8 million is part of a grant. The state, pending having availability and money, puts out grants from time to time. I think it's an annual basis for things such as hurricane sheltering. So what the board voted on is, this is a reimbursement grant for this $2.8 million. So that means the board's got to come up with the money up front and then get reimbursed as we go along with the expenses being submitted. So every quarter we submit a report to the state. We've been doing that since last fall, that tells where we're at, and where we expect to be for the next quarter. And so the finance department actually handles that. As far as sharing of dollars, the school board, I think, has really gone quite a ways down the road, because the school board made the commitment to fund the $2.8 million out of school system funds in exchange for getting the grant in pieces as we go along. And so what we've done is all 6 projects went into design. We got that money up front, got those going, and now we're in the construction phase on 2 of them. 2 more will be behind it, and if there's any funds left, there'll be 2 more projects behind that. I don't get heavily into the grant side, but what the board did vote on was the board voted to go ahead on the construction side, front that money. And so we've got that money to pay for that construction, and then it gets reimbursed in time through the financial dealings once those things go to the state.
And at this juncture, are there, and perhaps this is for the hurricane briefing, but are there additional requests from emergency management potentially asking for us to have additional hurricane shelters that may not be provided in those grant funding?
I'm not aware of any. That would definitely be something for the folks involved in the hurricane sheltering. That'd be Mr. McFadden's area and safe schools. Our role is just, once these things happen, to take it into design and then get it through construction. So I'm probably not the best person to ask as far as the funding piece and the grants and how that works. You know, I've touched very briefly on it in the past, but quite honestly, that would be a question better asked for them. I can tell you that when Mr. McFadden gives his update, he'll share with you where we are on shelters and where we will be once these things complete, including the projects we spoke about today.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else, board?
Oh, I do have one question. Can you give us an update on the gym for Reddick? Do you have any updates on
Thank
that?
you for reminding me that's not a project, and I would have been remiss. Yes, I do. You may recall sometime back, I'm thinking maybe it was 2 years ago, we had some pricing for the demolition of the gym. We got pricing in just the other day for it, and once I came to and got off the floor, I said, okay, well, it's not a project, but I do need to get it to the board. I haven't even really had a chance to go through the whole channel, but we're looking at $499,000 to do the abatement and take it down. And it's partly because of the economy, but also because it is so deteriorated, it's almost unsafe to go in there to abate the asbestos and all the hazardous materials. So we got to do a little abatement, take a little building down, do a little more abatement, take a little building down. Otherwise, it would be too unsafe to send anybody in there. And so, like I said, we haven't even had a chance to digest, well, how would we accomplish this? I know in the past I've had discussion with our chief financial officer that said, well, something like that, because it's a one-time deal, would come most likely from the general fund as a one-time expense. But I hadn't even had a chance to go through all the channels to share this. It's so fresh that we immediately said, well, let's try another route. Let's try to price abatement independent of the construction work, and then price the demolition separately. And it's just not any cheaper. That just happens to be the going rate for that particular project. And it's very intricate because of the fact that there's quite a bit of it there, and a lot of it's covered with debris that's fallen on it over the years. And so if this is something the board does want to pursue, certainly I'd be happy to get with the folks in the finance area and make that happen. But we got formal pricing. Today's Thursday, yesterday, actually. Yet that's how fresh it is. And it's $490. I'm rounding off to $500,000 because it's $499,970 or something. So.
Alrighty
Yes.
then. Well,
Ms. King, you're probably regretting asking, but
Yeah,
I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did, because it was not on the list since this involves projects already underway. But I'm happy to take it in whatever direction the board wants to do, unless you want to think about it a bit. But the only other option we could think of is ensure that it completely stays locked up, which of course there is no assurance, because in time even the boards fall off, and that's the problem we're having now. So people can still find a way to get in if they're risky enough. Either that or you fence it off, let it implode. But the right thing would be to take it down. But unfortunately, the cost is way more than many of us could have imagined.
It does. That's an eyesore out there. We don't need that. At some point, we're gonna have to take it down to get it out of there. But it's definitely, that's a huge cost.
It is huge.
It is, and I'd love to say, give it 6 months to a year, it'll be better, but it's probably only gonna get worse, because the more that building continues to fall down on itself, even harder it's gonna be to get in there to do the abatement. And so today we stand at $500,000, you give it a year or two, it might be $650,000, we just don't know. It's just so hard to predict, but the only guarantee is that building is continuing to deteriorate. There's very large holes in the roof, water pours in when it rains, there are almost no windows left in the building, and no doubt that's exacerbated the deterioration over time.
Yeah, it is a lot of money, but it is the right thing to do for numerous reasons. Also, for safety, and so I don't know what you guys.
It makes me wonder, because it is such a blight on that main road going into that community. And it makes me wonder if we would be eligible for any type of community improvement block grant. Reddick certainly deserves that. It's an exorbitant amount of money. I agree, we have to do it one way or another. Creative ways to fund it would be my question. I'm also wondering if there's anything left in there that's salvageable, copper-wise or anything else, and that it might cost more to extract that out with the abatement, within the abatement issues, for it to even really be worth it. But that building is mostly brick, correct?
It's all brick with a wooden roof structure, what's left of it, and a wooden floor system separating the first and the second floor. And but everything else is brick. There is no concrete block in it. The slab in the kitchen is the only thing that's concrete. Everything else pretty much is wood. And that's part of the problem with, wood swells, it rots, it gives way, and there are large sections of roof that have collapsed.
Would that brickwork be contaminated as well?
The brick, not so much. The main contamination is the roof decking, because there's asbestos shingles on it, and also the floor mastic. The floors years ago were asbestos tile, they were carpeted. And when you pull the carpet up, it sticks to the asbestos, so you make the asbestos friable. And part of the problem is the carpet's a little bit hard to get to in some areas because sections of roof have fallen, so you have to clear the area just to take the carpet up. And so it's the roof and the second floor and the carpeting on the first floor, which are the main areas contaminated. The walls, not so much. They're brick. There is some degree of ceiling tile that's asbestos ceiling tile. A lot of it's now on the ground, and it's pretty soaked and soupy. And so it's more or less scoop up with a shovel because it's deteriorated as it's sat in water for years.
We probably need to come up with a deadline as to when we're going to get started on this, and then possibly maybe, Kevin, you could help us with communicating out to the community that we could sure use some partners on this. Maybe I'm just thinking too far outside the box, but where there's a will, there's a way. A lot of people really love that brick style, and that can be valuable to folks. So if we can combine a deadline with some creativity, and if nobody bites, then we'll do what we have to do, which is choke on the bullet. But
To your point, Ms. Thrower, sometimes there are fundraisers of sorts, buy a brick for whatever the amount is, and have this piece of history. That I think that there could be some great. Are we going to raise $500,000? Probably not. But there might be some creative ways. I'm not sure if Cheryl Martin at the county and the community development block grant, if demolition is a part of community development block grant process. Usually it's construction or something like that. I honestly, I don't know if just straight out demolition is. That's certainly something for our grants department possibly to talk to Cheryl Martin about. My concern is similar to what you guys have. I have a concern if somebody does get in there and potentially gets injured or something, what's our liability? And I'm sure
that's why we need a deadline.
It's significant. And so we don't need to just continue sitting on this. We need to make a decision. I agree. I don't know what the deadline needs to be, but I agree.
Any other thoughts? All right. Are we in consensus that we would like to at least look at some opportunity. It would be great, in my view anyway, to see that area be reclaimed and something good come from it. It was a respected educational institution, you know, in years past, and it definitely served a need in the community. So to have something to look forward to would be important, I would think. So what's realistic, Mr. Knight, in your view, will we be looking at, you know, give it 90 days, 6 months? You know, time goes by really fast, and yet we have to give it an opportunity to get out in the community, see what Cheryl Martin might have for us, that type of thing. How long do you think we should give this?
Well,
And what can we do to shore it up in the meantime?
yeah.
The access, I mean.
All I know to do as far as offering any sort of temporary solution is to partner like we always do with the technical services department and see if they can't reinforce the barriers that are on there and try to strengthen them to some degree. I would say within 3 to 5 months, we'll probably be back to this point again as far as the wood. There's just not much left to anchor to put barriers up there. You know, you shatter the brick or you put it on a wood frame and the wood frame's rotting, things fall out on their own in time.
So that property, that building could probably still be easily assessed even with what we've been doing, trying to secure it.
Yeah,
I
Mr. McNaughton can attest to that too. He could bring in the safety
yeah,
side. I'm sure he could.
yeah, I'm thinking we need to be sooner than later on what we need to do. I don't know what type of funding or how we can get it done. It's probably something we need to talk with Ms. Marston Ellis about as well. But it's going to end up costing us one way or the other, and I'd rather for it to cost us just money and not money in life. That's what I'm looking at, safety.
Right.
Well, good morning to everyone. And yes, we've been dealing with this problem for quite a long time now. We're still having kids make their way into it, even though we try to secure it the best we can. Probably over a year and a half ago, I personally reached out to the sheriff's office and the fire department and told them that I didn't feel comfortable with them going into the building. So if someone broke into the building and they had to go in, then they were doing that at their own risk because the building was, I think, condemned quite a while ago. So
How long ago, approximately?
at least a year and a half, 2.
Yeah, it's been over a year.
But it's definitely not safe for just some kid to go in there not knowing the dangers,
Of course not.
let alone those who have to make the repairs or do the demolition.
And then even with Marion County's homeless transient population, you know, if they figure out there's a way to get in there, we're gonna have a serious problem with that. And I think we're just gonna have to buckle down and do what we have to do, get it going. That's the only thing I can see.
I don't disagree. We've also been dealing with this for a while, and when you look at a $500,000 price tag, I think it does warrant just a little bit of,
Yes.
investigation to offset our costs. I think that's fiscally responsible, and also tech services can roll back out there and do what they can in the meantime. Maybe this would be one of those situations where we would take care of it and then find some type of reimbursable part of it, because of, there's just a lot of different aspects to that property that might make it eligible for something like that. And again, I think time is of the essence. There's urgency here is what I'm hearing, and I agree with it. So how quickly can we get?
Well, Madam Chair, I was going to ask, and I'm going to ask Mr. Knight as well here. I'm looking at July 22nd. Is that a good date to bring back an update to the board with some options?
Could be, that
works for the board.
we're certainly not in the grant arena, but we'll be happy to partner with those folks and see what we can share the information we have in the facility and let them do what they do best, which is search out these things, and then we can bring back something to the board. Certainly.
Right, it'll give the folks that, would
Okay.
be involved a chance to at least look into it. And also, too, say we just said today, okay, we're going to write the check. How soon can we take the building down? How long is that going to take anyway?
It would take up to 2 months because they've got to go in first, make things safe enough to do the asbestos abatement, and then go back, take some of the building out of the area so they can finish, and then they could take the building down. So it's about a 2-month time frame to do all those things.
Right, and we're going into hurricane season too, just saying.
In our rainy season.
Yes, so maybe we could do this concurrently, because I think there's consensus here that this needs to get done, so at least find out the timeline, get on the list. In the meantime, we'll do what we can in the background to offset some of the expense, and let's get going.
Should we go so far as to agendize this thing? It'll take, of course, a couple weeks to get on the board agenda, so it'll be, well, I think tomorrow's the cutoff for June 22nd, and then beyond that, it would be July 13th, I guess, would be the next board meeting. Should we agendize, expecting to move forward unless something happens in the meantime? Because I'll be giving you an update after the agenda approval if we do that. I just want to make sure I'm on the right page. I don't know what y'all.
I don't know how my board members feel. I think it would be in the best interest of the district. After we left out one important component, and that's Ms. Boston Ellis.
Right.
So if we can, maybe Ms. Thrower, since you're chair, if you can have that communication with her before it gets on the agenda. Or
Right. She did, she has communicated before that the money would likely come out of the general fund. It's a one and done.
Yes.
So I think we've got the money for it, but yes, of course. She's always a big part of our conversation.
She is. I was like, she's not here. She's probably listening. What are they doing?
I was expecting her to run through that door right now. So,
Run through there.
All right.
Probably.
I bet within 30 seconds.
I hear footsteps. Okay.
But we'll be, of course, happy to involve her and share the information with her as well, actual pricing, so.
Okay, so at the very earliest, it would be the July 13th agenda, and at the latest, it would be the July, did I hear 22nd?
Work session.
Work session.
Work session.
Work session.
Okay, all right. Yeah, let's memorialize this, because then the action will happen.
Okay.
All right,
Okay, thank you very much.
thank you. Is there any public comment? Yes, sir. Those chairs get a little
Chairs and
unforgiving.
they are the least comfortable chairs.
Well, I'm Ira, but they live at 2657 Northwest 27th Avenue here in Ocala. For many, many years, the Reddick Collier gym, that old school there, it was used for the community of Reddick. They had midnight basketball there, summer recreation. Once the school was closed, it was used, for the citizens, the youth of the community to come out and participate in positive activities. Because at one time, there was a lot of crime in the area. Mm-hmm. But my point is this, and Pastor Stockton brought this up a moment ago. Is this school not a historic school? I don't have all the particulars. I'm just asking the question. Because if it was designated as a historic place, there may be federal funding that maybe could help the situation. And if not, I was thinking again, if we did have to tear it down, could we not look for in the future to maybe put a recreation facility there so that, again, go back to having a place for those youth out in the rural area to participate in some positive activities after school and during the summer months.
Correct.
Years ago, we used to have a interlocal agreement with the county, the city, and the school board for
Youth.
youth activities in the summer months. And I really hope that we get back to that, because those rural areas, I'm telling you, Lakewell Middle School, we had a great program out there, okay? Reddick Collier, Dunellen, just East Marion, out here where these kids didn't have nothing to do, all right? So, I just wanted to bring that up, and Pastor Stockton brought up thought about the historic thing. That was, great, a positive thing. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up, and hopefully, we can move forward into something positive. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Bethea. And yes, I think that was exactly our point in acknowledging, the history up there and thinking outside the box. Now you have me thinking with those bricks, wouldn't it be great to salvage those bricks and use that to build something back really cool for that community? Yes, Mr. Stockton, Bishop Stockton.
And as Bishop Stockton is coming, and Councilman Bethea, thank you for coming
Yes.
with that suggestion, because I'm not sure if Reddick Collier, did they ever make it a historical designation?
I don't think they did.
And that's the issue with several of our, I don't know that Howard Academy was ever actually designated
It is.
as,
It
well,
is.
some of our other buildings have never actually,
been.
even though they haven't actually gone through the process.
Right, and I think that's something that we definitely need to know going forward when we start talking about these. I know we have A Street, Howard, Fessenden, and Reddick, so we definitely need to know those historical designations. I think we need a listing, be honest with you, for the school district, a listing of all those that are historic.
Even the location where Bellevue Santos is.
Correct,
It's historic.
Is
Correct.
historic. I don't know that it's ever been designated that.
correct.
If I may, Madam Chair. Mr. Knight, I think you can speak to a couple of these items, right? Because I asked some of those questions about historic registry, so can you provide some
Yes,
insight?
be happy to. You're correct, Mrs. Campbell, there are few school sites that are actually registered. There are plenty, I think, just because of age alone, that qualify. Ocala, or Osceola Middle School the main building is on the historical register, and I think that was partly because it's in the historic district, and most likely that got swept into the fold some years ago. 8th Street also is that same thing, and Howard Academy is on a federal register. But I don't believe that some of these other schools like Pheasant are on there because they haven't been applied, or the school district hasn't applied to add those. So there's an application process. It goes by age, and I think it also goes to the historic significance of that facility within that community. And certainly Marion County has plenty of rich history, whether it's Reddick or downtown or out west in the Dunellen area. And certainly it's something that I think that probably needs to be looked into. And again, it's probably on the outer fringes of our immediate area, but we'd be happy to partner with grants and other folks to look at how this registry takes effect. But we discovered Howard Academy by accident, actually, looking through the federal register because we couldn't find it on a local register. And so sometimes these things get on somebody's radar and not on somebody else's. And if you don't know where to go to look, you don't even realize that some of your own buildings are actually in a registry.
Right. Sounds like it's time to complete the circle. And who would typically take the lead on something like this?
I'm not even sure, because I don't know that there's been any one entity that oversees any of those things. I think some of those kind of happened as they went along, probably just on whoever was in the seat at the time.
Normally, there was probably some community group
Yes.
that saw a need and knew the significance of those sites
Somebody spoke to
and
somebody.
pushed to get them registered.
And Dr. Gullett, I wonder if this would be something under the community impact, that community development department-ish that we're about to potentially have. I think that would be a significant project for that
Agree.
person.
Board Member Campbell, absolutely.
It's actually really exciting to be talking about it.
Right.
And
Sorry,
the reason-
Bishop.
No, please. Board members, thank you. But to kind of add to the reason why I leaned over to Dr. Bethea is because in Columbus, Ohio, where I was born and raised, we had a historic high school that is now state-of-the-art, but anybody that knows anything of the history, they were able to keep the shell. I mean, everything inside is completely, all they did was keep the brick shell on the outside. That's the only thing that is reminiscent of East High School because of the community. And they were able to get federal dollars. The school board was able to get federal dollars because it was a historical building. And as long as they kept the facade on the outside looking the same, the inside is totally different.
Right.
And totally different. And then, but from anybody historic, you look at old pictures, it looks exactly the same as it did when it was originally built almost 100 years ago. But also, another partner in that would help expedite the historical process is the town of Reddick. So you talked about the interlocal agreements, and because of the town of Reddick themselves, so their town council should be part of that conversation, and would probably expedite it a lot faster because Reddick as itself is a historical place, and that would be the buy-in to get dollars, especially to help that community, a lot, because it could almost be like a Main Street project for them, being that building takes up a quarter of Reddick. It is a huge building. So, but that was one of the things, and I know that they were able to do that, and I won't say that the whole process was completely funded, but they were able to get a very large chunk of federal dollars because of that being a historical building, and the fact that the school board still owns it,
And
operates it. That's another pocket of money historically that can be put in it. As long you could keep some community educational components in it, those are dollars available. So.
And Madam Chair, thank you, Bishop. One of the things, he's absolutely right. That's kind of what happened, if I'm not mistaken, going back to what we did with A Street and Osceola. The feds did come in. We had to do some matching. There was some matching of dollars to get it done. I think we probably went over what we need to do, but that's a great possibility. I think that we just need to figure out how to get it done and explore those opportunities.
And Madam Chair, I just wanted to say thank you again to Councilwoman Bethea and Bishop Stockton. But Councilwoman Bethea, I know Madam Chair was looking at me quite a bit because I've been kind of harping on this intergovernmental meetings again, that we need to start having those conversations. I believe it has been quite some time since we've sat down together collectively and had that kind of dialogue that's needed, and bringing the people to the table that can make the decisions potentially even on the spot. I'm excited about that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you, Board Member Campbell. Attorney Powers.
Yes, just something that we should consider going forward, and Mr. Knight will, if he doesn't already know, will have easy access to be able to find out some answers for us, is that when we have something that is designated as a historic landmark or it's on the National Historic Register, funds that may be available are unlikely to be available for demolition purposes. Right. They are more likely to be available for rebuilding purposes. And short of a significant rebuild, this may not be the property that we have determined is in a position for rebuild. And in addition, demolition may be a more sensitive topic once something is designated. So if we rushed to designate it as as something that's placed on the National Historic Register, and it hasn't been to this point, it may require a more thorough review prior to approval of any demolition plans. So our best efforts may end up creating difficulties for us, and we would probably need to review that in our analysis.
Thank you, Attorney Powers, for bringing us back down to earth. And yes, we don't want to inadvertently create more delay. So that is a very important point for us to hear. There's a lot of aspects to this project to bring it forward and create something anew that will be really good for the community. The community certainly deserves that, and where there's a will, there's a way. But we also, that's the beauty of collaboration. We have the big ideas, and then we have the reality of making it happen. So thank you for that.
Google is great.
So is God.
Yes. President was named to the National Register of Historic Places in 1994. So Fezzidan does have the designation.
I thought so. Yeah.
So others will have to just research, and that,
Good. Good. Anything
Dr. Howard
already?
told me that. Google, I'm still working on.
It's only partially great.
We need more broadband. All right, well.
Mr. Knight.
Yes, thank you. You just never know what we're going to ask you when you come up here.
That's okay.
Straight up building, not so much.
I don't know, and I'll get you what I can.
Okay, all right, so it looks to me like unless there's any more public comment, we'll be moving on to the 5-year school plant survey updates. And then, board, we will take a quick break.
Okay, well, good morning, still. Last month, spoke to you about the 5-year school plant survey. which is due June 30th. And there were a couple of big questions that came up that we've researched some, and I have those answers for you. One of the questions was the adding of classroom wings within the survey. We didn't show any because there wasn't really any way that we could figure out to show a need. So we went to our consultant that we utilize for services like this, 5-year surveys, which of course happens every 5 years. And what came out of it is the state has recently changed its rules to some degree. What those changes are that the board no longer has to have in a survey a building that they want to build that they can't justify through a need. And that's a surprise because that rule changed some years back where at one time school districts could use all their local money to do whatever they want. When we built Hammett Bowen Elementary School, the state said, oh, you didn't put that in the survey. And when they found that it was local money, they said, oh, never mind. It still counts as seats against you. So as far as the notion of putting any sort of classroom wings, we talked, I think, specifically about Ocala Springs Elementary School. The consensus from the consultant is if the board wants to put wings in there, even though we may show a surplus, because that surplus is scattered, if you want to do it, don't put it in your survey, put it on your 5-year work program. And if you're going to fund it with local money, then you could, at least for now, do as you like. Those seats will, of course, get added to fish, and they'll, if there is still a gap, it'll still show a gap as far as abundance, but the board would not be restricted to having to have it in the survey in order to do it. And that holds true apparently for any building that the school board wants to spend local funds on, which is really almost every fund source. It's your millage, it's any sort of impact fees that you have in place, any sort of sales tax referendums, or any special referendum localized. So it would be exclusive to that. If the state were to give the board money, then you have to have everything in your survey. And we get about $1.4 million a year on average from capital outlay and debt service bonds, which that barely covers an air conditioning project anymore, so it wouldn't build a wing. So the thought is if the board wants to add those classroom wings, we can add them to the 5-year survey. They do not have to, I'm sorry, we can add them to the 5-year work program. They do not have to be in the survey. So if at the board's desire, I'd be happy to investigate those things and add whatever the board might like to add as far as new classroom wings. The other question came up with Evergreen Elementary School, what do we show in the survey? And the consensus was if the board's going to reopen it as a school or reopen it in some capacity where there would be students there beyond 12 months, you probably want to leave the seats there. Now, if it's not going to be a school at all for a while, or it's going to go 3, 4, 5 years, say, into the future, then you could take the seats out. The only risk is if you take the seats out now and you try to make it a school and you've got wings going on, that would lead to potentially such a gap that the state may deny you reopening that as an elementary school. And so it really depends on what the thought process locally we have as a district on Evergreen Elementary's future. And I know we just are rounding out one school year, and of course now we're getting ready for the next. But the thought there is to leave it as a conditional use, which means that it is conditional upon the use of it. There's not a thing wrong with the building, so we would not be closing it because of issues with the building. We're just electing not to use it as a school in order to reorganize and buy time. So the general thought there is we would probably want to put it in the survey as a conditional use to allow the board some time to think about what it wants to do with Evergreen, and then we could spot survey it in. Or if it stays a school, we just spot survey taking it off a conditional status and putting it back to full-time usage, and it's just a matter of paperwork. So I don't know if I've made things seem more complex than they are, but the bottom line there is you probably don't want to take the seats out, especially if you think you want it as a school again, because it might come back to haunt us. So the only other update is in going through the fine-tuned dealings of our survey, we did find that the Department of Education tends to now require a Castaldi study by an architect or engineer whenever you want to tear a building down, unless it's wood or it's much greater than 50 years old. And what that would entail is, say we want to demolish those buildings at Dunella Middle School like we talked about in the survey, we would have to get a Castaldi theory, and it's a mathematical formula that looks at the cost of refurbishing now and what's left of the lifespan within that 50 years. So if it's 45 years old, they'd be looking at a 5-year lifespan versus the cost of replacing those same buildings with a brand new 50-year lifespan. And unless you can really show that the costs are really excessive to keep this in play, then they would probably say you're really not justified in tearing it down. It's better to fix. And so what we've done on the attached sheets is we've highlighted in yellow those schools that are affected, and they're only the ones where we were going to do some heavy demolition. So the one at Anthony, we've highlighted in red anything that was shown to the board that we are anticipating probably we need to take out as far as language, or the board could put it in a 5-year plan and not in the survey and spend their own money, and there wouldn't be an issue per the consultant. And then over on the far right, anything in blue is something we noted as wasn't in there last time we spoke that we added, and that's just the ones in blue with kitchen food prep at East Marion and then ESC rooms at 8th Street are a fallout of dialing into the very fine-tuned down to the room in each school is where we're at, and we added those just because they weren't shared by the board. But really the big picture items are Dunella Middle School was the main one affected, and it's on the second page of this spreadsheet. So in red we had calling out to demolish buildings 1, 8, and 9, convert the current cafeteria into the media center, develop that area for a land lab, and then go ahead and build a new cafeteria and an admin building to replace the admin building. It still can be done, but those areas in red, if the board intends to do it in the next couple of years and is going to spend its local money, probably take them out of the survey and only show it in the work program. So what we have now shown in the survey is expanding the cafeteria and expanding the kitchen. And we did the same thing with North Marion High School, so we've got a little bit of experience in that. You show it that way in the survey, you get through your 5-year survey, and then when it comes time to do the project, if it's not feasible to expand, you spot survey a new cafeteria in, and then you phase that old one out. So instead of showing all this up front in the survey, recommendation is we won't show those demolition projects in the survey. They can stay in the 5-year work program, and then when we're ready to do those, we would spot survey in the very particular things once we're ready to do that. And I was told it's a way to circumnavigate the rules of the state. Read what you may in that statement, but that's how it was put to us. So I just wanted to be upfront in what you're going to see in the survey. We're recommending those things in red that we just vaporize that language. We can still show it in the work program, which I will be back to see you all in July for the first look at the 5-year work program based on the survey, plus any other things the board wants to add, again, with local money. And from there, we can carry on discussion about how we want to word that work program. But the survey, I just wanted to point out that if you see a difference, I've highlighted for you what you won't see in the survey. We could leave it in there, it's just it creates some other challenges for the board to get its survey approved, and the least path of resistance is don't show that in your survey. You can still do it, just show it in your work program and do it when you're ready to do it. So I guess if you go through the toll booth, you got to pay the toll. If you go around the toll, you don't have to pay anything. So
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
I like that. All right.
and let's see, and I believe that was it. Just to note that the work program, we've already started putting in these items from the survey into the work program because I've got to build it from scratch. And then this will be the work program for the next 5 years. And then the next 4, I'll be updating as projects come off the list and new ones come up. Right now, based on today's prices, just in case you're curious, it's about a $517 million work program total. Not what's funded, just what the cost value is. And looks like we're trending downward as far as our percentage of completion, mostly because costs keep rising and there's not much prognosis as far as additional revenue streams coming forward. And so that concludes the update. As far as the survey is concerned, I'll be agendizing for June 22nd, but certainly if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. If not now, then between now and then.
Thank you, Mr. Knight. Board?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Ocala Springs for a moment.
Sure.
With it. So if we looked at the wing, it would go on the work program. Is that
Yes.
correct? That would be the best way. So could we put that on there now, or, okay, so I would like to ask my board if you guys would be okay if we could add Ocala Springs Wings on the work program.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We're over capacity.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, is there any public comment? Seeing none, we will move forward into a break, 10 minutes at 10:35 a.m.
Thank you, Mr. Knight.
Yes, thank you. Our school board work session reconvenes at 10:47 a.m. and we will move right into our hurricane briefing update with Mr. Dennis McFadden. Good morning, sir.
Good morning again to each of you. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come and speak to you about the hurricane briefing update. So Florida State Statute 252.38 requires each county to provide a safe refuge for residents and visitors. The School Board of Marion County participates by providing facilities, food, supplies, personnel, and evacuee transportation during the declared state of local emergency. The state mandates that we have the facilities, the personnel, as well as the transportation, but we obviously go over and above to make sure that those that's in our shelters are well taken care of as far as food and other supplies. So what have we done? What have you done as a school board to get us prepared for hurricane season? As we know, hurricane season is started June 1st, and it's always a time where we try and make sure that we're in the best possible position to deal with any type of natural disaster. So we've identified the 14 participating shelters. We've got 14 school board properties or schools that we use for the shelters. We determined which shelters are host, impact, special, and pet friendly. Each one of the shelters, and depending on where the storm is coming from, with the emergency management, Director of Emergency Management making a lot of those decisions and getting information, updated information from the state, the federal weather services, we're able to determine which shelters will open up depending on, again, the severity of the storm and where it's coming from. The board has approved the 2021-22 Emergency Management Manual. We're constantly updating that as far as personnel. We'll send out the email again this week asking our department heads to review and make sure that the current names that's in there as personnel are updated. And then once we get an email from them, we'll make those corrections into the manual. Increased shelter space. We increased the shelter space from 13,988 to about over 19,000 in 2018. That's a huge and significant jump from what we had. Unfortunately, what we try to do is prepare for the worst. We talked about that. We don't want to just sit and be at a minimum level of standards. We want to prepare for the worst case scenario. So that's why we talked about the retrofit project, and that's why we put those in place. So we've also provided training to the shelter managers and some district personnel, the district staff, on April 8, 2021. We went over to the EOC, big room that we were able to spread out in, and we had great conversation and training with our shelter managers as well as district staff to prepare for this hurricane season. And these are some of the things we went over into the shelter managers training. Again, we talked about the host, impact, special needs, and pet-friendly shelters. Each one of those shelters, they're unique in how they're set up, and we just want to make sure that when the time comes, that we have the appropriate facilities for each one of those special shelters. Opening and closing shelters, so very important. We know that if we have the training and we know how to properly open the shelters, it makes for a whole lot smoother transition as you prepare to close. We've got signage, we got in the shelter management box that is provided to us by the EOC that has all the armbands and different paperwork and forms in it that helps us get through the opening and closing of the shelter. But we also had to consider shelter during COVID-19. This is something, again, that's unique and new upon us. So we discussed this extensively and how that would look, how we would put up signage if somebody has symptoms, bands, what color bands they would have, isolating them in a separate room, and definitely we're going to follow all the CDC guidelines as well as school board policies to make sure that we don't cause any further infections by allowing someone that's potentially have a COVID concern amongst those who doesn't. Food service is always great because we try to, Ms. Johnson does a wonderful job. She's always prepared, and the ones that's in the shelter, they never get to a point to where they have to worry about food. We don't give them steak and lobster, that kind of stuff, because, I'll be there too. but Ms. Johnson does a really good job. She really does. We appreciate what she does. And then we have transportation, and y'all all know Ms. Rebecca Aurora in the transportation piece. She's always well ahead of the game. As we prepare for these hurricanes or any situation where we need transportation, Ms. Rebecca Aurora is always ready to go. Again, we had to talk about sanitation and custodial services due to the COVID-19, and just in general, it is very important that they come in and clean on a regular basis, more than just once throughout the day. There's constant cleaning in those shelters because people are, we got them in there and they're in a certain area, and during the hurricane, they can't officially get out and do certain things. So we have to make sure everything is clean. Probably one of the most important things that we have to do, other than keeping people safe, is documentation of the damage and expenditures. We encourage our shelter managers and their team prior to any storm coming to go out and document, take photos, take videos of the buildings prior to, so that we can have proof that this damage occurred as a result of the hurricane. Lori Lively does a good job with that. She came in and was part of the shelter management training, and this makes it so much easier for us at the end of the hurricane season or the hurricane when we submit documentation to get reimbursed. If proper documentation will allow us to get that funding back better, easier, and quicker than if we just go through it without proper documentation. Okay, hurricane shelter expansion projects. Robert Knight gave you a real big overview of what we're doing. He gave you some details on each individual school and where they were at in this process. We've got 6 school sites that we're looking to, that has received the funding, the grant, and we're going to put some opening barriers. If you're familiar with Bellevue Middle School, you see on the outside of their windows, they got this here brown frame that goes over the windows. That brown frame will go over, like Saddlewood, Bellevue High, and that is what makes those classrooms hurricane shelter ready, by putting that wooden frame or that metal frame over those windows. We also use part of the grant to scrap down some of the equipment, like air conditioners on top of the buildings. That equipment is scrapped down now, so it's not a flying object during a storm. The grant completion deadline is September 30th, 2022. The total grant value is $2,780,373. The retrofit tentative completion time frame of 12 months. But we have to remember that because of, and it's not just Marion County and not just the state of Florida, but nationwide, the price of everything is going up. It is hard to get certain supplies. So that may affect when we complete these different projects. So what we do is with Robert Knight, and he gave you an update, we have a weekly update on where he's at with getting those supplies, and kind of give us an anticipated completion date on different stages of the project. It's hard to give you an exact date because things change. Okay, so these are our 6 projects that we are going to have as the expansion projects that we got covered up under the grant. We hope that the funding go far enough to be able to complete all of these projects. But again, the increase in the metal and the materials, we may not be able to do all 6 projects, but we're going to get as much as we can done, starting with Saddlewood and Westport High School first, South Ocala and Legacy, and then, well, actually Bellevue High, they've already started to getting fitted for the windows to cover for the barriers. And it's a breakdown of kind of an idea of when they're going to start, construction completion. But again, all of these dates could change depending on how far the funding goes and the accessibility to material. So this is our shelter space comparison before the retrofit, and then once we do the retrofit. So for instance, Bellevue High School, as an impact shelter, to be able to have 659 shelterees as a host, 1,373. Then in 2019, you can see those numbers increased a little bit to 775 as an impact, and then a host that's 1,498. But once we finish the retrofit on those numbers will increase to 2,194. And that's how each one of these categories are for the 4 schools here listed. And then we got 5 schools listed here: Fort McCoy, Hammett Bowen, Horizon Academy, Lakewood High, and again, Legacy Elementary. And we got Liberty Middle, Madison Street. Marion Oaks Elementary is not one of our shelter schools, but because again, the population in the south end of the county, we had to consider other schools to be part of this here shelter makeup, because if not, we find ourselves, we always have numbers short in the north end, but the south end, the population growth, we want to keep up with that population growth by making sure we have enough schools in the shelter as a shelter. So if we was able to get Marion Oaks Elementary fitted, we can add another 2,700 spaces in there. Then we got Saddlewood, same thing with South Ocala, Vanguard, and Westport. If you see Westport, we pretty much, after the retrofit, will have that as our special needs shelter. That'll be our designated special needs shelter, but they also will be able to have their pets there. Those special needs families will be able to bring their pets there, and it'll also be used as a pet-friendly shelter. And once we finish with all the retrofits, depending on how far this grant takes us, we can have over 28,000 shelter spaces in our district. So what are the next steps? We know if a disaster occurs, we're going to be able to provide facilities, food, supplies, personnel, and evacuee transportation in the event of a disaster. Shelter managers training for assigned staff. I'm beginning to get the results back of the training and the schedules that's been sent to me, and we know that we're in hurricane season, so what I do is keep that in a file, and that way if we do have a disaster, we already have the shelter managers already have their 12-hour shift schedule set up, so they don't have to wait to do it. And again, with all the retrofits, if we can get everything done, we could be over 28,000 spaces with the funding. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. McFadden. Board?
I don't have a question, I just have a comment, and I just want to tell you, thank you so much for the update. We know that we're in June, hurricane season is now upon us, and a lot of preparation and planning goes into the event that a hurricane comes our way, and we have really grown and come a long way by working with the director of our EOC, our health department, our city, our county, and our schools. When there is an emergency, we come together not only for our community, but for the state. And
All roads lead to Ocala.
right, but Marion County school employees rise to the occasion because they, like you mentioned, transportation, Ms. Wara, all those fine details and routes, and how do we pick up, our residents and to keep them safe, and food, and then we have the principals, and we have all employees that come in and take shifts to open our schools, and they do it openly and willingly, and that's a testament to ourselves. We all know that our hurricanes are becoming stronger, and so as a board member, I appreciate the dedication that has been put into this area, and if I've learned anything from watching this, the past few years, is that our relationships are key and important for everybody. So thank you, and if you could tell your team that stands behind you that we're grateful.
It was definitely it's a district-wide effort.
It is.
I mean, I remember going out on my first hurricane with the school system and how the bus drivers would go in all of these remote places to pick these families up who needs transportation, and a lot of times they'll say, "Oh, I'm not ready to go now." Then we have to circle back. They call back and say, "I'm feeling the winds are rising a little.
Yes.
Come and get me now."
Now I'm ready.
Now they're ready to go. But obviously, Ms. Rebecca Rohr and her staff keeps her drivers safe by not getting them out when the winds are too high. But they go out to these different places and do whatever they can to get people to the shelters, even when They went by several times to get them, and they don't want to go at that moment. But thank everybody for, definitely, this was worked on way before I started working on it. So it was a lot of things put in place by different people, and they should be commended for the work and the partnership that we have with our stakeholders in the community.
Sure do. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is a few years work in process.
Correct.
But I have to say I'm at ease. Not that I wish that upon us, but if it should, I feel like we are prepared.
We're prepared for a hurricane if one comes.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, since Ms. Boston Ellis is in the room, just looking from a cost standpoint, it does look like these grant dollars are going to run out sooner rather than later. And we do, I'm assuming, have general fund dollars to cover up so that we can ensure that we do get all these projects completed, if you don't mind speaking to that. Because of the 2.78 million, it looks like we only have 696,000 left on slide 6. And we still have 4 schools that haven't have a completion construction, so.
I believe we have had that conversation, and good morning.
Good morning.
We've watched the cost rise, and I believe Mr. McFadden has even reached out to the grantor to find out if there is additional funding available. But if it is the board's desire to continue with these projects and finalize them and even add others if needed, it would be your decision, and that would be a one-time expense. And that's the reason we have fund balance, to do those kinds of projects that are one-time. But we are actively seeking additional funds, and right now they just want us to spend what we have and then come back to them. But thank you for that question, because it is running out.
Thank you, Ms. Boston Ellis.
And I did reach out to the state, and in the event something happens and the projects are prolonged and we can't get them finished within the time allotted, we can request an extension, but they asked us to do that in January of 2022. We hopefully don't have to do that, but if we do, there's something in place for that.
I echo Ms. King's statement. Thank you. We have been harping about being prepared for hurricanes, and your staff, your team, y'all have done a great job in pulling this thing together. We know we had some issues a couple of years ago, but you've overcome those issues to get to where we are now, and that's making a huge difference, because to see how many beds that Marion County actually has the potential for, considering we've been blessed. We haven't really been impacted majorly by a hurricane in Marion County, but we've been defeated. We've been the support for all the surrounding counties. So thank y'all for that, and it makes a difference. And to our staff, I've been in those shelters when we've had when they've been activated, and those folk that come out of their own homes and sit there at night and make sure that everyone else is safe. And I always commend Ms. Rohr and that transportation department, because it's dangerous to be on the road when the wind is blowing in a bus. And then they get out there and they're going to get these special needs families and these families that are in those outerland areas and bringing them into our facilities, and they take care of them. So thank y'all. Thank y'all, Dennis, so much for that.
And if you have any questions, even beyond today, just please feel free to get in touch with Dr. Gully, get in touch with myself, and we'll get the question answered for you.
Thank you. And I, too, would just like to say that great changes come from strong leadership. And Vice Chair King, I'd like to personally thank you for leading the way on this a couple of years ago. I remember it started with the emergency operations, the manual and the need for updating. I remember the generators and being in a very precarious position. And it's a testament to the partnerships that we've built over the last couple of years, and then it becomes a pleasure to do this urgent work. And I just remember visiting the Emergency Operations Center for the first time a couple of years ago, and walking in and seeing that pit of different people representing all these different agencies and entities and covering every base. The homeless, what are we going to do about the homeless? What about the people that are incarcerated? What about, the pets? and just on and on. And the coordination that takes, and it has to happen like that because we know what happens. Hurricanes come up and we think they're going one direction and then they come right at us or come to a very populated area. And all roads do lead to Marion County. So most of the time we end up sheltering people that might not even be from our county, but they need us. So I would say that it's always better to get grant funding and get reimbursed for our efforts. But at the same time, we have a duty and an honor in this state to be who we are and where we are when it comes to disaster preparedness and support. So this board member would be all about dipping into fund balance to make sure that we have what we need and that we remain at the ready. So thank you to everyone who helps make this happen. All right. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, we will move back with Mr. McFadden for special detail MCSO Safe Schools. Change your hat.
Yeah, you worked up and I was ready to go. This is a simple contract that we have every year with the Marion County Sheriff's Office as well as the Ocala Police Department. The special detail contract allows us to pay off-duty deputies and for the Marion County Sheriff's Office to work our graduations and different type of events that we have, football games. So this is what the contract is. There's no change in it as far as price increase or nothing like that. It's the same as last year, and so we're just asking that be approved.
So it's just a renewal, basically.
That's a renewal of the contract.
Okay. Consensus? Sure.
We need them.
That was easy.
We need them.
That
Thank
certainly
you.
didn't take 15 minutes.
No, I knew that.
And tell them thank you because they made graduation real easy getting in and out.
It was,
Yes.
Getting in and out, so thank you.
It's been very helpful that we went out there earlier before the graduation started, and I'm supposed to meet with OPD to do the same thing because they got Westport, which is the biggest graduation class we'll have. So we got to make sure Westport is get the same treatment.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you so
I
much.
like the treatment.
And thank you for catching us back up on schedule.
Madam Chair, could I add something since we're here about graduation? Dr. Gullett said, why is he coming up? YouTube has blocked Denellen High School's graduation ceremony on our channel, where they have flagged it for copyright infringement. That is one strike against us. If we get 3 strikes, they close our YouTube account, so we are working feverishly with them. And with WEC, so what may have to happen is that there's no pre-ceremony and post-ceremony. In other words, when you log on to our YouTube channel to watch tonight's graduation at 7 p.m., it will not be there until 7 p.m. Ms. Campbell knows
yes.
YouTube is a stickler for this, and it's the first time we've ever had this. So while I had you all together, and you were talking about graduation, I wanted to share that with you.
They're using
So-
songs.
Because they play music before the ceremony, and that music is copyrighted, and our crew is not doing that. It's the WEC crew, so we're going to have a conversation with them to use
that
copyright-free music. Yes.
Okay, I got you.
It won't be as fun or as enjoyable because most people won't recognize copyright-free music, but it will still allow us to share those graduation ceremonies on YouTube. So I pardon the interruption, but you seemed like the perfect time since you were talking about graduation. So,
Sure did.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, is there any public comment on the special detail agreement for MCSO Safe Schools? Seeing none, you are up, Mr. Ayers.
Hey, good morning. Madam Chair, Madam Co-Chair, board members, Dr. Gullett, Ms. Patino, Attorney Powers. I'm here today to let you know that the contract negotiations between Marion County Public School and the Ocala Charter High School via the Clear Choice Academies has been completed. The contracts have been approved by both Clear Choice Academies and Marion County Public Schools through Attorney Powers, and that is going to be presented in a public hearing next Tuesday. And so it's published, the contract is actually published out on board docs now. It has been approved. It started off as the standard contract that DOE requires us to use, and we had some minimal changes between the two of us, but it's gone through, and once they're approved, they're scheduled to open up August 2022.
Wonderful.
So that will be
Passes muster with you, it sounds like.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, it does. And so, and there will be a public hearing that's already been scheduled, and it'll take place on Tuesday with the vote.
Now, they did change their name to
Yes, sir.
their choice.
Yes, that's been,
Kelly Charter.
they filed all the correct paperwork, and it's on Sunbiz, and it's all that. So,
Okay,
CCA.
yeah. That's a jail. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, I like how this is going. We have made up 30 minutes.
Public
Yes.
comment for O'Kelly Charter?
Yes, is there any public comment for O'Kelly Charter?
we're good.
Seeing none. I'm changed my mind here, and I wanted to include the Public Education Foundation before we broke for lunch, because I know y'all have lots of things to do. All right, so you're up.
Well, actually, I think it's me.
Oh, that's right, they're not presenting.
right.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
My mistake.
Yeah, it was me. So about a month ago, I asked for a cost analysis of the foundation because I was curious, what does the budget look like? What does cost look like and stuff like that? I appreciate Ms. Boston Ellis and your team providing me with very detailed budget and reports and stuff like that. I had also had great discussion with Ms. Maginal, where she provided a lot of great detail in the history of the foundation and the many and numerous programs that they have. Some of them, which include the Take Stock and Children, the Grow Scholarships, Paris to School, STEM Fair, Tools for Teacher Store, Teacher Grants, and also Teacher of the Year. And there's even more on top of that. I feel, or not feel, in my opinion, my questions have been answered, and I am comfortable with the information that I have received. So I have no further discussion on that.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Chair King.
Thank you.
Ward?
My only comment, and thank you, Ms. King, for bringing this up. I want to first say that I served as a Public Education Foundation board member from April 2015, I believe, until May of 2017. So my only comment is that I understand that I believe other districts potentially have memorandums of understanding with their public education foundations or whatever they call them. And I think that, I know that we have a kind of a half-page policy of sorts, and personally I would like to see a little more detail put to that, just to understand expectation levels on both sides, so that we're able to say these are the things that we say that we will provide, and back and forth on that. I know that participating back then, that was 5 years ago, participating back then, there were a few programs that were included back then that are not currently a part of, at least what I've seen of late. And I agree, they provide an incredible benefit to our teachers and to our students and to our schools. So I agree. But I do think that we could make that a little stronger from a language standpoint of what the expectation level is on both sides. So I believe Attorney Powers may have looked into some other district MOUs. I don't know if he has any information on that for us.
I have. I've located MOUs with public education foundations for 2 other counties, which could be utilized to create a memorandum of understanding that suits our needs. So I would just need for us to have a staff member assigned to sort of be the business owner for that, and I could put together some drafts for the board to review if that's the board's wish.
Thank you, Attorney Powers, and respecting your, opinion and your view is what we have now for our particular situation more than adequate for our relationship with the Public Education Foundation, or do you believe this does warrant a different and an updated memorandum?
It's within our option. It would be a policy decision as to whether or not it would be necessary. I believe that there would be some distinct advantages to us having a memorandum of understanding that spells out such things. But I would need to spend a little bit more time determining whether it was a necessity, so to speak. I don't believe it's a necessity, but I believe it would be advantageous in some ways.
Okay, thank you, because we certainly have a lot of necessities on our plate right now. And I am comfortable heeding your input as to how you would feel is best to protect us, continue to protect us and take this forward if needed.
I would want to have a discussion with a couple of school board attorneys that have MOUs and address their reasonings as to what it is that they find to be particularly advantageous with them. And I can reach out and do that. I have neglected to do that thus far because I've been locating ones that exist and trying to see the differences, because the differences in the MOUs between districts are pretty large, which is generally an indication that there are not necessarily just a small subset of important issues to be addressed. Some have them for various reasons and others have them for different reasons. So
can I ask, Madam Chair, in your looking for this, Attorney Powers, can you not only ask for those things that are advantageous for having an MOU, but those things that are also negatives?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Implementing an MOU. I think we have a great relationship with our Public Education Foundation, and sometimes you could stir the pot at the wrong time.
Right.
And I just want to make sure that if we're going to stir this pot now, that we're stirring it for the right reasons and not just to stir the pot. So.
And what jumps out at me is the time factor. We're our employees are extremely busy, and I would like to see them focused and staying focused on their job and not out there chasing little things that may or may not be. I'm not sure this is one of those things that are on my radar. I'm comfortable with the information I received. I'm not sure it's on my radar necessarily to invest our employees' time on this at this point. I don't know how my other board members feel, but I don't see a need for that.
The only other comment that I would like to share, just from a historical standpoint, again, when I was serving as a board member of the Public Ed Foundation, there was a strategic plan that was made about 5 years ago that had some very specific information about how they wanted to become separate from the school district and to become their own separate entity. As a former executive director of a foundation that did not operate as a DSO to the organization a direct support organization, we were separate, and there were reasons for that, and so nevertheless, there's a lot of information about the difference in a direct support organization and a non-direct support organization. And so that's the part of the reason I think that some of these MOUs potentially exist, because some are DSOs and some are not. And so just over the last 5 years, seeing kind of that shift a little bit. I mean, obviously, there has been a little tighter connection between the school board and the Public Ed Foundation in the last couple of years. So obviously, I haven't been a part of that board for 5 years. So, just kind of wanted to, when I saw this as an agenda item, these were the thoughts that I had about it. And so that's why I pursued partners that I know in other foundations around the state and got with Attorney Powers to, obviously, as you all know, we can't have these conversations, pick up the phone and say, hey, why did you put this on the agenda? So we have to do this publicly. So that's why I brought Attorney Powers into the thought process to say, look, I've been executive director of a foundation. I did it for 7 years, but there was a reason why we were not a DSO at the time. And 5 years ago, the organization known as the Public Education Foundation that I sat on the board for was also trying to still be a DSO, but actually become a lot more separate than they are now. And so clearly things can change over a 5-year time span, but I just wanted to bring that historical knowledge back as well, just for everybody, teacher to be scholarships and retirement celebrations and some things like the coupons for education, some things like that were also a part of their programs and 5 years ago that may not be now, but potentially are also things that maybe we'd like to include in an MOU, things that we would like to see. Or is it all school support that we want? Or is it all teacher support? Or is it just, I don't know that we necessarily can dictate what they can do, but there are some different things that we as a DSO, that we actually do have a little more oversight than potentially we've ever had before.
Thank you, Board Member Campbell. And yes, historically speaking, I was noticing and missing a little bit the coupons for education, and kind of wondering where those went and how that was funded, who organized that and made that happen. Would one of you be willing to let me know kind of the history of that? And
Good morning or good afternoon.
we're still on morning.
Megan Magamal, the new director of the Public Education Foundation. And in regards to that specific campaign question, that was a long-standing fundraiser. And as Ms. Campbell, having served on our board, and Ms. King, having served on our board, that fundraiser was intact during that time frame. In the past year, our board of directors, along with our prior leadership, Judy Zanetti, did a full evaluation and a 10-year look back to see the trends in that specific fundraiser. So we have to be good stewards of our donors' money and also our staff time, our volunteer time, and how we are utilizing our school resources. That campaign had run its course. The fundraising efficiency ratio was 90 cents for every dollar raised was going to expenditures. So when it comes to looking at true fundraising metrics, that fundraiser was no longer sustainable for the work that needed to be done.
Oh my, well, somebody made money on that one, and it doesn't sound like it was us.
It was not our students and our schools at the time.
I see. And it sort of makes sense to me, because in this day and age, you can pull up coupons, QR codes and everything, and right from your phone. So remembering that little piece of paper, I know most people would think of as being just, why bother if you can put it on your phone? So I imagine that the foundation will probably come up with some new innovative way to parlay technology into fundraising, like you always seem to.
Thank you. We are always looking for new ways to fundraise to support.
And Ms. Magamove,
Yes.
the foundation is a direct support organization, correct?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
And in looking at, if you look at the 12 most comparable counties to our district based on FTE, 8 of the 12 are currently direct support organizations, 10 of which receive in-kind facilities and 7 of which receive direct salary and benefit support, just as a part of that conversation.
So is there a need for an MOU at this juncture right now?
Out of the districts that we are similar to, it is not common to have an MOU, but it can be a continued conversation if it serves the board.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And I'll say I'm really looking forward to seeing the partnership and the progress, continue with your new leadership. Megan, thank you for answering the call. It always gives all of us great pleasure every 2 weeks to accept the donations, as you being the pass-through and often the conduit to making those happen. I know personally of a donor that has donated several times over the years that would not have donated had we not had a public education foundation. That's just kind of how they do things. So it is a fabulous resource. We're always going to have our eye on our fiduciary responsibility. So we'll continue to build our partnership with an eye to always doing what's best for our kids and our families and our community. So thank you again for coming in today. I don't detect a sense of urgency at this point. I feel like we have consensus there. It was very good to have the conversation.
And Madam Chair, if I may, I completely agree with the finding new ways and ideas. And while coupons may have been potentially an expensive endeavor as presented, it was presenting $80,000 plus a year to our schools for many, many years that were undesignated dollars to our schools. And so I know in particular a school like Dr. N.H. Jones, where my children have gone, we're benefiting from that as a non-Title I school, and the $20,000 that they were able to raise off of that every year. They've seen a significant impact on their school budget this year because they don't have Title I funding and because they are trying to provide the magnet. And so $20,000+ a year, multiple year over year that they were able to bring in from that particular campaign. So I am all for looking for additional opportunities that we and the Public Ed Foundation can
come up with to make up those dollars, those undesignated dollars to our schools, because they are significant. And the unique piece to coupons, and I understand the cost was potentially significant based off of what we've heard today, but the unique thing about that was you sell something for $20 and you get $9 to $10 back for your school that you use however you want. And as much work as you want to put into it is exactly how much you're going to get back at a 50% return, which is a pretty positive way to look at fundraising, frankly, for our schools. So if there is something else like it that we could come up with creatively, I'm sure those principals would be grateful for that opportunity to put in that kind of work and know they would get, 40 to 50% return.
Yes, thank you for those points. It sounds like you were very invested in that project, and I have no doubts that we'll come up with some creative ways to restore that and hopefully make it even more widely appealing and utilized. So that's what we're all about. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, we got public comment.
Yes. Is there any public comment?
So good morning. Glad to hear it's not good afternoon.
I know. We're still in shock.
So my name is Donna Kress. I did not fill out a form, but I understand I need to I need to share my address. Is that what it is?
You would just state your name and your address.
Sure, happy to do that. Again, my name is Donna Kress. My address is 713 Southeast 2nd Street, Ocala, Florida, 34471.
And can you spell your last name?
Sure, it's Cress as in Sam.
Thank you.
Sure. I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for having us this morning. And with that being on the agenda, I just want to provide some context around why I'm here today. So I am a current board member on the foundation. I've been there for a number of years. I think I'm on my second term, and I'm really just proud to be a part of that. Prior to being on the board, I was a school principal here in Marion County and was in the school system for about 20 years. It was very difficult to leave the public sector and move on to the private sector, and having done so, I will share that it's very much a part of my DNA to be a part of the Public Education Foundation and to have a foot still in taking care of our students and our staff. Having said that, being a part of Signature Brands, we are proud to be a part of the philanthropies in our community, and we certainly are a huge partner and a big supporter of the Public Education Foundation. And so you talk about relationships earlier in another caveat or agenda item, and it really is about relationships. Everything else will fall into place. And so I am just an integral part, and I'm happy to be a part of those relationships that are fostered within the leadership with Judy Zanetti and now Mrs. Magamal, Mr. Wagner, who is our chair. But we welcome anyone and everyone to any of our meetings. If there's ever something that you want to bring up or you have a conversation or a concern or a question, we have routine meetings. Please come and be a part of that. I know Beth McCall is a current board member on behalf of the school board Liaison. Thank you. There's a title for it. So she's there. Dr. Gullett's a part of that. So, again, it just goes back to this, that if there's a concern or thought, be a part of those conversations. Let's talk about it. You don't have to wait for this forum to make it so formal, because I honestly wasn't exactly sure what the context was, so I came out of curiosity. I know I sent Mrs. Campbell an email just to inquire a little bit about anything we can prepare, because we want to be a part of whatever that conversation or question is. So we welcome the future with whatever that the MOU is that you're needing to do or wanting to do. I just want to leave you with a quote: "If it ain't broke, don't fix it." So that's my philosophy. I don't know what we're after, but we are happy to be complicit and a part of whatever conversations need to take place in the future to satisfy the board. Thank you for your time this afternoon, or this morning, and moving in this afternoon. And I just want to reiterate, we couldn't be more excited to see Mrs. Magamal as our leader of the board there, so of the foundation. She's doing a fabulous job. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
You know, Ms. Kress, I've torn up a lot of stuff that wasn't broken. Matter of fact, I got a toilet right now I got to fix that wasn't broken. So, so thank you for that quote.
Resonates with all of us. Okay. All right. We have a decision to make, board. It is 11:30, which would normally be the time we would break for lunch. We have actually just one more agenda item, which is the general insurance renewal review, and then moving into our board concerns. So what is the consensus about finishing up or having lunch and then finishing up? What would you like to do? I'm good with soldiering on. I'm feeling sparky.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sparky. Keep on sparking along, and because I know Miss Lively's been here for a little while as well, and
We just kind of have them hanging out, so.
yes, and then we can do our grab and go. Does that sound okay? All right, it's unanimous. All right,
Thank you.
we can still say good morning.
That's right. Good morning.
Good to see you. Yes. Good to be seen.
It's nice, isn't it?
It is, it really is. So, just to introduce, so we are here today, especially for the benefit of Dr. Gullet and Mrs. Campbell, just for your historical, we do this presentation every year. This is for the Fuse to present our general insurance renewal, which is like our property and casualty insurance, and it happens at the same time, as I said, in advance of our July 1st renewal, so you will see this each year. And Chip is going to go ahead and start and present.
It's good to see you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Chip Few, and I'm the founder and principal consultant with Ben Few and Company. We are independent risk management consultants. We don't sell insurance, and we're not related to any kind of brokerage or agency or carrier. We work for you like a CPA would, and make sure that you have the things you need rather than just being sold the things you need. So we actually design the specifications and the coverages that you have in your program today. And it's our job to make sure that you have the appropriate coverages for the right pricing. And we have done this every year for you. We're part of your team, so we work with the school board. We don't sell to it. Our office is all industry trained. We're flexible, and we customize risk management programs. And you're in a self-insurance program, which is highly customized. We help you choose retentions, funding, the whole works. You become the insurance company, and so we kind of do the backroom work for you with your self-insurance program. Once the insurance is taken care of and renewed once a year, we help with the loss control assistance. We do your budgeting and your funding requirement projections. And we'll begin working on, believe it or not, the renewal for next year right away, because that never stops. This year is a good year. And I'm not here with any bad news. And we have been here with bad news for 2 years in a row. The market conditions this year are showing signs of relief. As you know, we've been through a period with several hurricanes, which created massive losses. And we've had fires in California, which have caused catastrophic losses as well. And today, property coverage is almost more of a commodity than it is a coverage, in that we can buy a certain amount of it for a certain amount of money, and that money is based on the current market. And the current market, the market will be based on what the interest rate is and how much surplus is in the carrier. And so right now, the last 2 years, we've had nearly 25% rate increases, because there has not been enough surplus to go around, so they're going to charge you for it. And also the interest rates are low, so they can't take the money they bring in underwriting and invest it to offset losses like they can in a soft market. And there's a slide later that I will show you that market trend and where we are in it. Property is coming down. There is more surplus in the market. You're going to see a remarkable difference in the pricing for the last 2 years as to this year. On the casualty markets, there has been some pressure on them as well. The automobile liability has had quite a bit of loss effect, and this is throughout the country, not just you. Actually, your losses are on the bottom part of the trend with the rest of the world, but unfortunately, we are affected by what happens in the world these days. One of the biggest increases, which I'm sure you know, is on the cyber front. We've had, you just read about the oil line getting shut down, and now a meat packing operation shut down. So we expect cost of cyber insurance to increase, and it has on this policy and will continue as the cyber thieves get more and more adept at what they do. You do not have to memorize this particular slide, but the only reason I want to show it to you is we break down every coverage or the main coverages, and you don't even really need to look at the premiums as much as a percentage of variance as to last year. And where we were here last year, or by a virtual meeting, we showed you that on that property sign, it was nearly 27% increase over the prior year, which had the 25% increase. This year's increase is a net 4.3%. Now, we did lower the values by, what was that amount, Ben?
About $2 million.
About $2 million, and that was basically school buses and excess fleet and material that we didn't need and got rid of. But that 4.3% is a tremendous indicator that we're starting to see the curve and come back down again. On the casualty coverage, you can see those percentages. Fortunately, that 84.86% is cyber liability. Fortunately, that's not one of the biggest premiums, so that didn't hurt us too bad. The good news is on the excess and auto liability, we've only got a 5% increase, and we've seen much higher increases on that for other school districts based on their experience. On the next page, this is the one that kind of gives you the full picture. These are the premiums this year, or the renewal versus the current premiums, and you will see that our entire portfolio is only up 7.32%, which is $150,000 over last year. Now, this is not just rate increase because we've had growth, and all your liability coverages are based on payrolls for the most part. So those have come up. So we've really got a very, very good renewal here. So where we were at $2,051,000 last year, we're at $2.2 million this year. This is a slide that tells the story when you're looking at your entire program. This is 10 years of your program. And you can see that in the early periods, we were in a tight market, just like we're coming out of now. It was much worse. It's always been property driven is where all your premium is. And as you can see on the bars on the other coverages, the excess liability, the umbrella, the workers' comp has been fairly, even though there's a little fluctuation, fairly constant because you're in a self-insured program. So we're not at the whim of insurance companies raising rates on us. We're buying excess coverage and we're handling our own claims below that excess coverage. So that coverage is more affordable and not as volatile. You can see where we hit the soft market there in 2015 and started coming out of it in 2018. Soft market means there's higher interest rates, companies are making money, and the claims aren't as catastrophic. It's hard to say that given the Florida, and we have hurricanes that nail us every year. You can see in the last two slides, or last two columns there, those that property premium is going up. And even though you went up this year, the 21-22 policy it doesn't even budge that graph because it's starting to come back down. So what we anticipate is for that graph, that curve to start coming down again for the future renewals, provided life is somewhat expectable.
Subject to change.
Always subject to change. Thank you. This is the funding of the self-insured portion. Again, we keep a risk management fund in the school system, and we pay our claims out of it. And it's actuarially sound, and we have an actuary look at it every year and give us our figures as to where we are, how soluble we are, and how much we need to reimburse our fund by each year. This year, now we work with a 65% confidence rather than a 95% confidence for a couple of reasons. Number one, you're big, so the 65% confidence gives us adequate cash flow to handle the funding. And also, your program is mature. And by that chart that I just showed you, other than property that we have a hard time containing, the funding on this is for all the casualty coverages. And what we need to do is reimburse our fund this year $1.9 million. And that is within 10% of the 10-year average going back. So what that is telling us is that this is working, and the fund is being able to be replenished, and we're not dipping into it too deeply. As far as the actual risk analysis, when it comes outside of just rating and getting the insurance products, we're involved in just about everything that y'all do. We're at Lori's, any call she makes, we're there. And what we did a couple years ago is we moved you from a totally insured value program into a loss limit program. And I believe that year we saved, that was one of those really downward years in the property cost. To do that, what it means is instead of buying $1 billion worth of insurance for all your property, we're buying $50 million. And we have a maximum loss test that is performed for us that shows that in a 250-year storm, which is the largest storm, we used to work on 100 years, now we've moved it to 250 as an industry, that your worst loss on your portfolio would be about $23 million. So we're keeping it at 50. And at 50, we're sure that the emergency management and FEMA will accept our program as acceptable and fair. And should we go somehow beyond that figure, they will respond. And if we had a $53 million year's worth of claims and we qualify for their program as a reasonable program, they will pay. And as Laura can attest, they have in the past. So we're very happy about that. That if we bought anything over $50 million, we'd be buying air, and it would triple our rates. On the casualty exposures, we're always reviewing your loss transfer and your contractual agreements with vendors to make sure that we are not responsible for the losses they cause. We're looking at a couple of the new programs you've got, the drone use, the CDL driving program, security options, your Guardian program. We've introduced coverage for all of these programs that have been brought in the last couple of years. And those premiums to date are very nominal in the makeup of your program. The money itself, we actually have in a grantor's trust fund. And what that means is it protects the money in that if you really wanted a building or some new project, you can't come rob it from the risk fund, because that would really be perilous if we did have a catastrophic year. So we have a grantor's trust that's signed by, I believe, 3 executive types. Mm-hmm. And it renews every 2 years. We want to keep that going. And if there's an emergency and you need money and you need to take it from that fund, they have to sign off on it. So again, it's just a protection of the risk management fund, which has to be. We can't go underfunding on that. On your cyber coverage, we've expanded that to include digital data recovery, business income, and extra expense. On this page, we already talked about the additional programs, your Guardian program. And again, we've got them all covered for insurance. It did add a little exposure when we've got sworn officers under workers' comp, If they have a heart attack, it comes under Florida statute and it's assumed to be a work comp claim. So that kind of adds a little exposure to us. And that goes the same with death benefits. We actually have a death benefit policy for them, which is statutory. We added the active shooter coverage 2 years ago. It's still in force. We are still analyzing our exposure to COVID-19. The good news is we've gotten legislation that gives the school board immunity for any claims that would come arising out of a COVID claim. And we're not seeing any, which is a really good thing. Our action plan going forward for next year is, number one, renew the policies as we've introduced them. We have fine-tuned them, and we stand behind your program 100%. We need to replenish the loss fund, agree to do that at the $1.9 million, and we keep that balance according to our actuarial work and what we're told to do there. We always are working on your contractual liability and your risk transfer, so we make sure that we're involved in that on a daily basis. We assist Lori in her department in any research that she needs. We will continue to refine the statement values, and we'll start preparing the data for the next renewal, believe it or not. And that's it, really a nutshell, and what takes a long time to put together a self-insurance program. And I'm sure it's a lot of information, but if anyone has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them for you.
Thank you, Mr. Few. Board.
Looks like they're in some good positions.
It's more fun to stand up here when it's good news.
More fun to sit here and hear it when it's
It was good you were on Zoom last year.
Right.
A little separate.
That was our way of self-protection.
Thank you.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Thank you very much. It was just a well-distilled presentation. There wasn't anything about it that, to me, wasn't crystal clear. On behalf of the board, we thank you for your continued partnership with us and your expertise. And Ms. Lively, you're the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes.
Is there any public comment? Seeing none. Have a great day. Okay. Well, we've just moved through it today. All right. We will move on to board concerns. Ms. Prestipino. Nothing for us today? Okay, thank you. Mr. Powers.
Yes, Chair Thrower. I have in my possession a letter, and it is dated today, June 3rd, 2021, from Board Member Beth McCall. And I'd like to read that into the record. It's to Governor Ron DeSantis, the Capitol, 400 South Monroe Street, Tallahassee, Florida, 32399. Dear Governor DeSantis, in 2016, I had the distinct honor to be elected to Marion County School Board District 2. I have worked as an advocate for public education my entire adult life. To be able to serve in this capacity was rewarding and fulfilling. In 2020, I ran unopposed to secure my second term. Marion County Public Schools experienced significant turmoil in the last few years. Working through the turmoil, making difficult decisions for our students, and fulfilling the voters' desire to move from an elected to an appointed superintendent was the priority of our board. The school board began to work together cohesively, always trying to stay focused on doing what was best for our students. Most recently, the culmination of that cohesiveness included hiring an outstanding superintendent to move our district forward. Being able to use my leadership and strategic planning skills during that time has been professionally and personally rewarding. I have lived in the District 2 for 26 years. I am passionate about the schools in my district and have established excellent relationships with the principals. Due to health issues of my husband, we have made the decision to look for and move to a smaller, more manageable home. That opportunity was not available in District 2, but presented itself in April of this year in Marion County School Board District 1 that put us closer to family and met our needs for my husband's health. My decision was based on what is best for my family. After working with our school board attorney and others to determine if there were options available for me to finish my term, the statute is clear. I must reside in the district I serve. I will not compromise my values or integrity to try to find a loophole such as placing a camper in a campground in District 2 or finding other avenues to claim my residency. That is not the example I want to set for my grandchildren or the students I serve. I am having to give up a seat that I love serving in, that I have served well in, that the law gives me no option to complete my term in because I have chosen to put my family first. Therefore, it is with a grateful but heavy heart that I submit my resignation as the school board member representing District 2 of the Marion County Public School System. My resignation is effective immediately. My work is not done. I will continue to support the district and work as an advocate for public education. The Marion County School District is on a positive trajectory with a strong, capable superintendent and the majority of the school board working together to drive student achievement. I wish them nothing but success. Sincerely, Beth McCall. As per Ms. McCall's instructions, I have relayed a copy of this to Governor DeSantis, and it has been provided also to Mr. Christian.
Thank you, Attorney Powers. Are there any legal implications that we need to be aware of in terms of voting?
At this point, any vote that we make would just, of course, need to be a 3-to-1 vote in order, because a 2-to-2 vote would obviously end up being problematic for us. Other than that, there's nothing that an appointments process will need to start. The governor, it's not clear how the governor will initiate that process, whether there'll be a search committee or how he chooses to go about that. I was unable to find in statute a clear directive as to how the governor must go about it. I believe it's simply something that he has the option to appoint, and he will certainly research his avenues in doing so. So at this point, I believe that with our remaining 4 board members, we carry on and continue with each vote as need be.
Thank you, and I can only think of one vote where it was very close, and what ground are we on? As I'm thinking of Evergreen specifically.
In the Evergreen situation, both yourself and Mr. Cummings chose to have a no vote and gave your reasons as to why. There were 2 board members who voted yes, and then Ms. McCall voted yes as well. Now, the vacancy of Ms. McCall's seat, her resignation is effective as of today. The vacancy technically occurs at a time when she moves out of district, but the resignation occurs as of today. I would believe that we would need to, I don't believe there's a need to do anything at this point. I believe that vote stands and is effective. However, if my opinion changes on that after further review, then we would simply need to bring that back to the board's attention and have them address it and find out whether the vote is the same or whether the vote changes at all.
All right, thank you for clarifying that. That was really my only outstanding.
And to my knowledge, there's no other situation where we've had a vote that was not a 5-0 or 4-1 anyway that it would apply to.
Right, I couldn't think of any others. But.
And in fairness, that vote which you bring up there, my understanding was, in your words, Ms. Thurr, that vote, you were voting no sort of as a protest vote and gave your reasoning, and that Reverend Cummings had voted no because of, he felt he had some obligations to people he had tried to promise he would do everything possible in his power to avoid having to come to that. So, I have no doubt if we were to need to go back to consensus or a secondary vote, then I believe we'd be able to achieve resolution.
I agree. Board?
I have a comment about this, about that, if that's okay. If anyone knows Beth, they know that she loves and adores her family immensely. And I completely respect her decision that she had to make, and it was difficult. I personally want to thank Beth for her public service and her dedication to Marion Public Schools. She championed a lot of things that many people don't know and will probably never know. And one of the biggest things that I can think of right now is the referendum. But there's many more things other than that. She is a wonderful and true professional who is a forward thinker. And Beth, if you are watching this, you're truly going to be missed.
Thank you, Vice Chair King.
Let me say that Beth, Ms. McCall, her term on this board truly demonstrated her compassion for this community, but as well her passion for doing what was best for students and making sure that they stayed in the forefront of our decisions and being fiscally responsible while we did it. As Ms. King just stated, I love the fact of how Beth championed that referendum initiative for this county and really worked super hard to make sure that those areas of our school district that had that were falling short receive the right funding so that they can, especially the arts program and the music program. She loved the arts. So I think of Beth as a class act, a true leader, community leader, and she's going to be missed from this board. Her perspective on many of the conversations that we as a board had were always valued by this board, and I think she's that piece of the puzzle now that's being moved. I think that she was a valuable part of the puzzle for this board, and thank you, Beth, for your service.
Thank you, Board Member Cummings.
This is a difficult day. I mean, I second everything that you guys have said. You guys worked together to bring Dr. Gullett here, and Ms. McCall championed so many important initiatives of this board. All I can think of is those are incredibly huge shoes to fill. And so whoever will follow in that seat needs to understand the respect that this board and this community and this school system has had for that seat representing District 2, so much so that she ran unopposed. No one thought that they could fill those shoes and didn't even try. So at this juncture, this is a sad day for our community and for our school district as far as I'm concerned. She has professionally done amazing things in this community and will continue to do so. She's been a champion for children and will continue to be that champion, I'm sure of that. And I welcome her to come to share public comment. We've always talked about needing more community engagement. Come share with us thoughts, and we'll be able to pick up the phone and call her now. So that actually is a benefit, if there even is one to consider. But this, I kind of have to say I'm a little shocked. I mean, but I agree completely that she's always going to put her family first, and that she's done that in this regard. And putting her family first is also one of the reasons she was there, because she has grandchildren in this district that she cares about deeply. And so she's done that again in putting her family first, and her husband and the needs that he has, and respect the decision entirely. But I just have to say again that frankly, this is a sad day as far as I'm concerned. But thank you for your service, Beth McCall.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I too want to just thank Ms. McCall for her long-term commitment, much longer than the time I've been here, and it's been a pleasure to work with her, and her advocacy and service to our students at our district will be missed. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Beth McCall, I hope you're watching, and I thank you for your service. My prayers go out to you and your husband, as well as your family. And we will soldier on, because that's what we do. And I certainly expect to see you around in all of your various capacities going forward, and new ones too. So thank you again. We do need to immediately start thinking about the vacuum that the departure of Ms. McCall is leaving to the board. It doesn't sound yet like we know of a timeline when someone else will be appointed. I would like to suggest that until we do know who will be sitting in the District 2 seat, that we start deeply thinking about, but wait to appoint as chair, a replacement for Board Member McCall's on the Insurance Committee comes to mind.
I'm actually on that committee now.
Oh, you're on it now? Okay, good. All right, well, that's one I can cross off the list. Spearheading the funding referendum, which we will be meeting to formulate our strategic game plan and mission for that on June 17th. And knowing Board Member McCall, she will be willing to assist us in any way that works for her. So we have that, and then also she has been our legislative liaison and conduit, as well as serving in an officer's position on the Florida School Boards Association and being a liaison. So those are the ones, the capacities that immediately came to my mind. And I'd like to know the rest of the board's thoughts on just...
The Public Education Foundation also that we
Yes,
mentioned today.
That's right, that's right. So I'd like to know the rest of the board's thoughts on just giving ourselves a chance to digest and process this and know that we do have a little bit of time anyway. It's most important to me to make sure that whoever joins our board is honored for their specific talents and strengths. I think doing that has brought this board a long way. And so I'd like to see that continue, and I welcome your thoughts.
I agree. I think it's important that we just digest, and whoever is appointed, let's learn them, because hopefully
And
bring great things to the table.
And I actually, we don't know the timeline, and I know that we just went through master board training, but frankly, I think that will be something that will be helpful as we have a new person to do again.
I was thinking about that.
And I would like to recommend in the future, just as a board member coming on and being here for 5 or 6 months before we went through that, I would like to see that sooner rather than later in the future for every board. I feel like we grew a lot in that hour, or the one-day event as a board cohesively, more so than we had in any time in the first, several months of my term. So I would like to say sooner rather than later, within the first 2 months of whomever the new appointee is, if we are able to schedule that, I think that will be important for us.
Right. I think COVID got in the way a little bit of meeting face-to-face with our board refresher or master board refresher, and I agree with you 100%. It's so valuable. So hopefully we will be able to do that quickly. This district is moving forward in a lot of great directions, and someone that joins us is going to have to get on the ship and start rowing very quickly.
Yeah. I think, well, like I said, Beth's going to be truly missed. Next week we go to our FSBA conference, and Beth played an integral role in the Marion County delegation being at that conference every year. So I think we just need to kind of digest this and then come back and reset. So.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So we'll look forward to hearing any tidbits of information that we may get in terms of what will be happening going forward. Attorney Powers, who would be the point person for this? That would hear anything? Would that?
That's strictly the governor's.
That would hear anything for?
From the governor.
Yeah.
It would be the governor's office. There is a person who is attached to an email that's appointments, an appointments email at myflorida.com. But I'll have to find out who that person is. But there is a point person to who those should be directed. If there's any commentary to go to the governor, if that's what you mean.
That would be great, because I think opening a line of communication would be important in whatever respectful way, and following protocol is very important. This board is too dynamic to do it any differently. Dr. Gullett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would think that perhaps, to your question, that it may be you as well as the chair of the board to represent the other board members. That would be, in my opinion.
Okay, well, Attorney Powers and I.
And I've just received back from the governor's office an email indicating, "Dear Mr. Powers, thank you for contacting the appointments office. Our office has received a letter of resignation from Beth McCall from the Marion County School Board. Her service to the state of Florida is greatly appreciated. And if you have any questions or need assistance, please feel free to contact us. Most respectfully, Executive Office of the Governor, Appointments." So.
Was there a name?
No name. I've got a phone number. So.
Okay. All right, great. Maybe you'll get that to us.
Right.
Or to me. Okay, well, that was sobering. I just had a couple of quick things in terms of updates. And our next work session and administrative briefing is June 17th at 9 a.m. It will include school planning update, best standards, final renewal for the contract for McIntosh Area Charter School. We will be discussing funding referendum options, MTI, MTC, ongoing discussion of relocation options, and COVID-19 updates if needed. I also wanted to share, and you all may have gotten this email as well from Mike Kelly at MTC, that the practical nurse pinning ceremony is June 9th at 7 p.m. at the MTI auditorium. And I feel like we may have had some discussion on this previously, but that is when we're expected to be down at Florida School Boards Association, FSBA. And so is there anyone that's planning to attend? Or I see...
I thought one of you said you would drive back.
That's what I thought I was remembering, but I just wanted to confirm, because that's all graduations are important.
I had said that I was originally going to drive back, but I got a conflict now, so I won't be driving back.
Okay.
I was going to send out something to Mr. Kelly the day of the appointment with that. It's unfortunate because it's during the time of our conference.
Yeah.
And that's just an unfortunate time, but we definitely support the pinning of those nursing students and their graduation as well. So, yeah.
And Madam Chair, just as a reminder to you all, and I don't know how this potentially, hopefully all three of you will be able to be here, but this work session on June 17th is the one I will not be present for. It's my doctoral residency.
Yep. I did remember that. So hopefully we'll be hale and hearty, and if not, we'll be Zooming. Okay, and I believe that is all I had in terms of updates. And Board Member Campbell, do you have anything else for the good of the group?
I was just going to mention that work session and just how grateful I am to all of the teams for graduations. We mentioned that already. I know I'll be participating in another one this evening, and feel like the World Equestrian Center has been a terrific venue and potential partner for us in the future. And I hope that could potentially be the case. That it seems like it's been a really great, with the exception of them playing copyrighted music, but I do think that it's been a great venue for us, and I hope students and families, I'm interested to see their perspective and what their thoughts have been, especially those that have had multiple students graduate through the district and what they've thought about this year in comparison. But just grateful for the whole team to be able to make that be so successful students separated and the big fans that the parents are able to sit under and all of that WEC brings. So that was the only thing I was going to mention. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Cummings.
No, I just want to say, kids, please, graduates to this class of 2021, please be safe as you're doing your celebration and you're graduating. It's a time to rejoice your accomplishments but please do it safely and that's it.
Thank you, Board Member Cummings.
I don't have anything, thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I too just want to say thank you. Thank you to all of you for being present and supporting our graduates. It's been wonderful to have everybody in there. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yes, and I really enjoyed the Vanguard High School graduation and went off without a hitch that I could detect last Friday night. And it was very joyous, very well run, just amazing. And I know that I've been hearing that the rest of the graduations have been going the same way. We were at the Livestock Pavilion for Vanguard, which was their choice, remaining in their community. WEC just continues to evolve into a very exciting community partner, and it's wonderful how open they are to the whole community and the care that they're taking to make sure everyone feels included in such a spectacular facility. So looking forward to growing that partnership.
Madam Chair, what is Westport the only other one we have left? I'm sorry, I'm not sure. Who else? Bellevue. So now that we have our board member, Ms. McCall, who is not representing Bellevue, do we need to have another one of us?
I plan to fill in for.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure that was taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. And I was interested in the insurance overview, and what caught my ear was that by statute, school systems, if I heard this accurately, are immune from COVID-related claims.
That's what I wrote down too. He said there was legislation.
Yes. And that legislation has passed, from what I understand. Am I right?
That's my understanding, yes.
That's important because we've had so much conversation about mitigation practices and concerns on both sides. So that's good to know that our efforts have not gone unnoticed in that arena, and that as we continue to do all we can to provide the best education that we can to each and every child, that we have that support. That is a tremendous relief at so many levels. So good. And then I also just wanted to, I love to give a little shout out to Hillcrest School, and they've obviously chosen their E because they are making pens as one of their many projects, and they have plastic molding machines, and I decided I would test this pen today because my pens always seem to run out because I write a lot, and all over the place. And it really writes very well. It feels comfortable in the hand, and I think they sell them as a fundraiser for only $1. So shout out to Hillcrest today for your providing a great employment opportunity for our students and vocational education and technical too. Yes. All right. Anything else from you, Mr. Presbitino? Okay. I believe we've covered all the bases.
Since you brought it up, I will point out that the statutes that are recently created regarding COVID immunity, sections 768.38 and 768.381, and 768.38 specifically applies to all businesses, governmental entities, and schools. And it is pretty broad and sweeping. It's first that Florida's the first state to have done this. Provides broad immunity to businesses, governmental entities, and schools for COVID-related claims. In order for someone to make a COVID-related lawsuit, the plaintiff would have to show gross negligence, something much more severe than simple contact.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much to our legislature for taking the lead and being bold on that. It certainly is appreciated. All right. Well, if nothing else, then I am happy to say that we will be ending this work session today at 12:16 p.m. Thank you so much.